Chapter 1736. He, Field Officer Sun, is indeed a strict commander. In front of the Wu Battalion, Ching Chumo and Yuchi Baolin left after listening to Sun Jiping's lecture. Li Zixuan walked up to Sun Jiping and smiled. Marquis. Sun Jiping was shocked to see Li Zixuan. He quickly cupped his fist and greeted him respectfully. Last year, Li Zixuan led the Imperial Guards to attack the Snake Spirit Mountain. In that battle, the Imperial Guards suffered heavy casualties. Sun Jiping could only watch helplessly as his fellow soldiers died in the hands of Een Batian and the belly of 7th Cultivator of True Virtue. It was extremely painful. However, Li Zixuan destroyed the Snake Spirit Mountain single-handedly and avenged the Imperial Guards. Ever since then, Sun Jiping respected Li Zixuan immensely. Seeing Sun Jiping's respectful look, Li Zixuan chuckled and waved his hand, saying, "Haha, this is the military camp. We can address each other as soldiers. You don't have to be so polite." "Yes, I'm joining the army." Hearing Li Zixuan's sincere tone, Sun Jiping hesitated for a moment and cupped his fist. Tell me, how did you become the field officer of the Wu Battalion?" Li Zixuan smiled and asked. He was overjoyed to meet an old acquaintance in the Black Armored Army. However, he was still curious as to how Sun Jiping came to be in the Black Armored Army. Sun Jiping thought for a moment and replied, "Ever since the rebellion in the 4th month, the Black Armored Army suffered heavy losses. His Majesty ordered the reorganization of the Black Armored Army. The soldiers of the Black Armored Army were all selected from the 12 battalions in the capital. General Gudu recommended me. I passed the Black Armored Army's assessment and became the field officer of the Wu Battalion." To be able to become the field officer of the Black Armored Army, it proves that your personal ability is outstanding. Hearing this, Li Zixuan nodded and couldn't help but smile. An unnatural expression flashed across Sun Jiping's face. He forced a smile and said, "I'm only at the middle stage of Qi transformation. How can this insignificant ability be considered outstanding?" It was pure luck that he was able to become the lieutenant of the Wu Battalion. This general's ability is far inferior to General Dugu and Ho. "Lieutenant General, you..." Li Zixuan shook his head and said, "Your personal martial arts realm may not be as good as mine, but you were born in the military after all. In terms of military experience, you are far above me. There is no need to belittle yourself." Sun Jiping cupped his fists and said, "You flatter me, Colonel." Li Zixuan still wanted to say something, but he saw that the soldiers of the Wu Battalion were already leading their horses and walking towards them. So he said to Sun Jiping, "Haha. Then continue with your training, I won't hold you up any longer. Come to my tent tonight and let's have a good chat." "Yes. Join the army." Sun Jiping cupped his fists and said. Li Zixuan nodded and turned to leave. He didn't go far, but he stood at the edge of the drill ground and watched the soldiers of the Wu Battalion from afar. Because of Sun Jiping, Ching Chumo, and Yuchi Baolin, he paid special attention to the Wu Battalion. He wanted to see how the most elite heavy cavalry of the Tang Dynasty trained on a daily basis. These were not shown on TV in his previous life. He could only speculate and imagine from the words in the history book. Now that he could see it with his own eyes, he naturally didn't want to miss it. It was just that he felt that Sun Jiping seemed to have something that he couldn't say. But this wasn't the place to talk, so they could only talk in private at night. Ahem. Campus broadcast for the first time. Campus broadcast for the first time. Li Zixuan started his military career in the Black Armored Army's camp. But at Yanhuang College, everything was as usual. It was not appropriate to say that everything was as usual, because today, Yanhuang College ushered in a new thing that appeared for the first time in this era: radio. In the afternoon, the square and beehive-shaped objects on the electric poles on both sides of the road suddenly sounded a person's voice at the same time. Those teachers and students who participated in the killer project and stayed back during the summer vacation were all shocked at this moment. They all looked at the square box on the electric poles nearby. What is this thing? How can it speak? This thing seems to be installed in the early morning, right? I saw someone climb up with a ladder to install it. Was that the sound just now made by that thing? Seems like it. Why does this voice sound so familiar? I think I've heard it somewhere before. I also think it sounds familiar. Hey, I remember now. Listen, doesn't this sound like the voice of the green sparrow? The teachers and students of the academy surrounded the square box, radio, on the electric poles in groups of 3 to 5. They could not help but point and talk about it. Fortunately, they were used to all kinds of new things in Yanhuang College in the past year. If an ordinary person at the foot of the mountain encountered such a bizarre thing, he would definitely be scared and think that God or Buddha had come down to earth. There was a high chance that he would kowtow and worship. But after all, these teachers and students of the academy had experienced the influence of engineering knowledge for a year. Moreover, the academy had just developed a loudspeaker not long ago. Although this thing in front of them looked different from a loudspeaker, its function was more or less the same, which was to transmit sound. The only difference was that one needed to be placed next to the speaker's mouth, while the other did not need to be placed next to the speaker. Therefore, not only were the teachers and students of the academy not frightened by the radio on the electric poles, but they were also very curious and wanted to find out what it was. And soon, someone identified the owner of the voice in the radio just now. It was Li Tai. Li Tai's identity was special. Many people in the academy knew him, so it was not strange that someone recognized his voice at this time. Is it really the voice of the green sparrow? Could it be that this thing was made by Qingke? Too amazing! This thing seems to be able to transmit a person's voice very far away. I wonder where Qingke is now? After figuring out the owner of the voice, the teachers and students of the academy immediately exclaimed. Thinking of Li Tai's identity as the deputy chief engineer of the second and third trump card projects of the academy, everyone easily guessed that the radio on the electric poles was probably made by Li Tai. After all, even some teachers in the academy were convinced by Li Tai's talent in engineering. Qingke, the sound can be heard from test points 1 to 10. Your radio is a success. Everyone in the academy is talking about you now. Everyone was guessing where Li Tai was at this time. In fact, this little fatty was in the Guanghua building of the academy. Li Tai had applied for a small room from the academy to be used as a radio room. At this time, Iron Egg, Sun Zifen, Qin Huayu, Meng Wenhao, and the others pushed the door open and said excitedly to Li Tai, who was sitting in front of the desk. Chapter 1737. Good. That's great. This is our first success, and we'll have a lot less trouble in the future. In a classroom in the Guanghua building of Yanhuang College, Li Tai said excitedly when he heard the news from Iron Egg. Qingke, you're really amazing. Everyone has never heard of this broadcast before. Not only did you come up with it, but you also made it. No wonder even Mr. Mo usually praises you for your outstanding talent. Meng Wenhao couldn't help but sigh. He and Li Tai were competitors in the beginning. Back then, when they were in the mathematics school, either he or Li Tai would be first in every exam. The two of them could be said to be evenly matched in the field of mathematics. However, since the establishment of Yanhuang College last year, Li Zixuan proposed engineering on the basis of the new mathematics. Engineering not only included mathematics, but also physics, chemistry, and other subjects. This made Meng Wenhao a little overwhelmed. Although his exam results were still among the best in the academy, it was difficult for him to pose a strong threat to Li Tai like before. This was because the current Li Tai had transcended the scope of a student, and began to lead the students and teachers of the academy to do scientific research projects. No matter what, Li Tai was born into the royal family. His vision and knowledge were naturally not something an ordinary person could compare with. When a person was not only born into a good family, but also worked harder than others, then this person would be very difficult to surpass. Ha! Didn't I tell you before? This broadcast was not my idea. It was all Yamacho's idea. I just followed Yamacho's instructions. Li Tai shook his head and said. As soon as he finished speaking, the door was pushed open from the outside. It was Li Gang, Yen Silu, and Mo Huai, the three big shots of the academy together. Wenji, it's here. It's a gadget made by Chinke. I heard it's called the broadcast. Yen Silu pointed to Li Tai inside and said with a smile. Broadcast, broadcast, spread widely and widely. What a fitting name. Li Gang thought for a moment and said with a smile. When the people in the room saw Li Gang and the others enter, they hurriedly stood up and saluted. Greetings, Mr. Wenji, Mr. Yen, and Mr. Mo. Li Gang was basically in a state of semi-retirement. He neither taught for the students nor managed the affairs of the academy. However, he still lived in Yunshan. Other than teaching little Anren, he would come to the academy. In the eyes of the old man, the students of the academy were also his children. The old man happened to be in the academy today. When he heard Li Tai's voice resounding throughout the academy, the old teacher was shocked and wanted to find out what was going on. In the end, he happened to meet Yen Silu and Mo Huai. As the current administrator of the academy, Yen Silu naturally knew what Li Tai was doing recently. Thus, the three of them directly came to this small classroom. Haha, no need to be so polite. Li Gang smiled and waved his hand. Then, he looked at Li Tai with a kind face and asked, Chinke, those radio broadcasts outside, were you the one who created them? Li Tai nodded and said, Yes, Mr. Wenji. The principle of the broadcast was told to Tai by Yamacho. Today the first test was successful. Tomorrow, Tai plans to have the broadcast installed in every corner of the academy and in every classroom. This way, if the academy has any important announcements to inform the students in the future, it can be directly announced through the broadcast. There's no need to inform each class. Good, good, good. This is a very convenient thing. Li Gang could not help but nod when he heard this. After a pause, he said with emotion, Ha ha! In just a short year, our Yanhuang College, from its initial establishment until now, has been tinkering with many new things that are convenient for the people's livelihood. It seems that Yamacho was right to insist on engineering. Things like the telegraph, the electric light, and the radio, this old man could not even think of them before. Now we've actually made them all. It's really amazing. Yen Silu could not help but stroke his beard and laugh. Ha ha. This old man thinks so too. After staying in the academy for so long, this old man feels that what Yamacho said back then was very correct. Confucianism cultivates the mind, while engineering benefits the world. Confucianism and engineering do not conflict. This old man believes that with the two complementing each other, our Tang Empire will soon usher in an unprecedented golden age. Li Gang nodded in agreement. At this time, he turned to Mo Huai and asked, Mr. Mo, how is the expansion of the academy and the construction of the mountain guarding formation going? Are there any difficulties? Before Li Zishuan left the academy, he had handed over several very important matters, the most urgent of which were the expansion of Yanhuang College and the construction of the mountain guarding formation. The former was to establish an independent institute for the medical school, similar to the Imperial Medical Department, while the latter was to protect the safety of Yunshan and prevent the crisis of Wu Jie's sneak attack on the academy. Mo Huai cupped his hands and replied, This old man has already begun to recruit workers and craftsmen a few days ago, focusing on those who have participated in the construction of Yanhuang College. After all, they have experience. Oh, the construction team formed by Hu Lijing of the Han village is also here this time. Not only did they participate in the construction of Yanhuang College, They were also the main participants in the construction of the Dragon Gate in Lantian County. They can be said to be very experienced. This time, the expansion of the academy is not very big. Only 3 more courtyards need to be built, and then a few buildings to the west of the academy will be divided. Then, a wall will be used to completely separate the School of Engineering and the medical school. On the contrary, the construction of the mountain guarding formation will be quite tedious. Although the School of MO is proficient in the construction of mechanisms, and the Divine Ancestor once built a mechanism array in the School of Mo's headquarters, the world was in turmoil and most of the drawings of the mechanism array were lost. Moreover, the terrain of Yunshan is very different from that of the School of Mo's headquarters, so it is not suitable to be mechanically copied. I can only modify it according to the terrain of Yunshan and with the help of the School of Mo's mechanism technique. However, Taoist Li Chuanfeng's words have enlightened me. He said that the mountain guarding formation of Yunshan can be changed by the Taoists 1 yuan, 2 forms, 3 talents, 4 symbols, 5 elements, 6 directions, 7 stars, 8 trigrams, 9 palaces, and 10 directions. Combined with the School of Mo's mechanism technique, it will make it difficult for those who want to harm the academy to get close to Yunshan. The first draft of the mountain guarding formation's blueprint has basically been completed. Previously, I heard from Yamacho that Taoist Xian Qing should be coming to Yunshan soon. When the time comes, I will let Taoist Xian Qing check it out. After all, the Celestial Master Path has always been very knowledgeable about the way of formations. Upon hearing this, Li Gang was silent for a moment. Then, he nodded and said, "Yes, that would be the best. The academy has gone through the previous disaster and was almost destroyed. It really can't take any more twists and turns. The construction of the mountain guarding formation must be considered thoroughly." Mo Huai cupped his hands and said, "I understand. Qingke, I heard that you are going to Bingzhou and Yunzhou to build telegraph relay stations. When do you plan to set off?" At this moment, Li Gang looked at Li Tai and asked kindly. Chapter 1738. Replying to Teacher Ji, everything needed for the telegraph relay station has been prepared yesterday. Tai had originally planned to set off for Bingzhou after the Academy's broadcast was completed. I didn't expect the first experiment to be so successful, so Tai plans to set off tomorrow. The telegraph relay station concerns the outcome of the war between the Great Tang and the Turk. It cannot be delayed. Yanwang College. Li Tai cupped his hands in greeting to Li Gang in a classroom in Guanghua Building. Although Li Gang wasn't in the imperial court, he had experienced ups and downs in the officialdom all his life. He had long since become shrewd with age, and he had always paid attention to national affairs. When he heard Li Tai say that the telegraph relay station concerns the outcome of the war between the Great Tang and the Turks, he wasn't surprised at all. Instead, he nodded solemnly. "Qingke, you're right. The telegraph relay station should be built as soon as possible." Yamacho emphasized this matter before leaving Yunshan. "Since you've already prepared everything, you can bring some of the Academy's teachers and students who are participating in the Trump Card Project with you to the north tomorrow. The Academy will fully cooperate with you in all the manpower and resources you require. We must complete the telegraph relay station as soon as possible." Li Tai cupped his hands in a solemn manner. "Tai, I will not disappoint Yamacho and the rest of you." Li Gang nodded. Suddenly, his eyes focused and he said in a deep voice, "Qingke, this old man isn't worried about the technical problems when you lead the team to the north to build the telegraph relay station. This old man and Yamacho both believe that with your talent in engineering, you will be able to solve any problems in front of you. This old man is only worried about your safety. There are many experts in the Turkic kingdom. Although this old man doesn't know about the martial arts world, I know that the Turkic state preceptor is an expert among experts. Previously, he was able to sneak into Yunshan alone to steal confidential information. If he learns that Chinke is going to the north to build the telegraph relay station, it's hard to guarantee that he won't do the same thing again. This time, in addition to the teachers and students from the Trump Card Project going north with you, half of the Academy's guards will also go with you. This is because Chinke and the rest of you are the hope of our Yanhuang College. Replying to Teacher Ji, everything needed for the telegraph relay station has been prepared yesterday. Tai originally planned to set off for Bingzhou after the Academy's broadcast system was set up. I didn't expect the first experiment to be so successful, so Tai plans to set off tomorrow. The telegraph relay station concerns the outcome of the war between the Great Tang and the Turkic Kingdom. Yanhuang College. Li Tai cupped his hands in greeting to Li Gang in a classroom in Guanghua Building. Although Li Gang wasn't part of the court, he had experienced ups and downs in the officialdom all his life. He had long since become a shrewd old man. Moreover, he had always paid attention to national affairs. When he heard Li Tai say that the telegraph relay station concerned the outcome of the war between the Great Tang and the Turkic Kingdom, he wasn't surprised at all. Instead, he solemnly nodded. Chinke, you're right. The telegraph relay station needs to be built sooner rather than later. Before Yamacho left Yunshan, he emphasized this matter. Since you've already prepared everything, tomorrow, you can bring some of the teachers and students from the Academy who are participating in the Trump Card Project to the north with you. The Academy will provide all the manpower and resources you need. We must complete the telegraph relay station as soon as possible. Li Tai solemnly clasped his hands and said, Tai, I will not disappoint Yamacho and the rest of you. Li Gang nodded. Suddenly, his eyes focused and he sternly said, Chinke, this old man isn't worried about the technical problems when you lead the team north to build the telegraph relay station. This old man and Yamacho both believe that with your talent in engineering, you will be able to solve any problems in front of you. This old man is only worried about your safety. In the Turkic Kingdom, there are many experts. Although this old man doesn't know about the martial arts world, I know that the Turkic state preceptor is an expert among experts. Previously, he was able to sneak into Yunshan alone to steal confidential information. If he learns that you're going north to build a telegraph relay station, there's no guarantee that he won't repeat the same trick. Thus, in addition to the teachers and students from the Trump Card Project going north with you, half of the Academy's guards will also go with you. Chinke, you are the hope of Yanhuang College. Li Gang nodded. Suddenly, his eyes focused and sternly said, Chinke, this old man isn't worried about the technical problems when you lead the team north to build the telegraph relay station. This old man and Yamacho both believe that with your talent in engineering, you will be able to solve any problems in front of you. This old man is only worried about your safety. In the Turkic Kingdom, there are many experts. Although this old man doesn't know about the martial arts world, I know that the Turkic state preceptor is an expert among experts. Previously, he was able to sneak into Yunshan alone to steal confidential information. If he learns that you're going north to build a telegraph relay station, there's no guarantee that he won't repeat the same trick. Thus, in addition to the teachers and students from the Trump Card Project going north with you, half of the Academy's guards will also go with you. This old man is the hope of Yanhuang College. Chapter 1739. Your Majesty, Prince Wei requests an audience. Afternoon, Suite Du Hall. Li Er was absent-mindedly reviewing the memorials. In the morning, the Central Secretariat had already sent out the conscription notices to the various prefectures. This made him feel more or less relieved. However, there was still a problem as to how to deal with the provisions and equipment for the 150,000 soldiers. Li Er couldn't help but feel anxious. At this moment, a chamberlain suddenly walked in quietly and bowed to Li Er. Oh, Chinke? Let him in. Li Er, who was in a mess, raised his head and said to the chamberlain, Yes, sir. The chamberlain accepted the order and left. After a while, Li Tai, who was wearing the Academy's scholar's robe, walked in and bowed to Li Er. Your son pays his respects to father. Yes. You may rise. Seeing Li Tai, Li Er's mood instantly improved. Just as Li Gang had said, Li Tai's current actions could be said to be the hope of Yanhuang College and the Tang Empire. How could a father not be gratified to see his son's ability and achievements? Qinke, why are you not at Yunshan? Why did you return to the palace? Li Er asked with a smile. Li Tai cupped his hands and replied, Father, I returned to the palace today to bid farewell to father and mother. Bid farewell? Li Er was stunned when he heard this. Then, his expression changed. He leaned forward and asked in a deep voice, Qinke, are you leaving for the north? At dusk yesterday, he had received news that the steam engine invented by Li Tai had been successfully tested. Today, Li Tai had entered the palace to bid farewell. There was only one possibility. Li Tai nodded and said, Yes, father. The manpower and materials needed for the telegraph relay station have been prepared. Your son plans to bring the elites of the academy to Bingzhou tomorrow morning to build the telegraph relay station. Li Er was silent for a moment and nodded. Since you have made your decision, Qinke, I will support you. Later, go and tell your mother. After all, you have never left Chang'an for so many years. The furthest place you have been to was Yunshan. Li Tai was originally very favored in the palace. As the saying goes, a son travels 1,000 miles and his mother worries. Although Li Er and Empress Zhongsun were the emperor and empress, they were also parents. They would inevitably be worried about Li Tai's departure to the north. Yes, father. Li Tai cupped his hands in acknowledgement, but he did not leave. Li Er asked Li Er, Why? Qinke, do you have anything else? Li Tai cupped his hands and replied, Father, the teachers and students of the academy who are following me to the north are all talented in engineering. Previously, the academy was attacked. This time, Teacher Wenji was worried that we would encounter danger and wanted to let most of the academy guards follow me to the north. However, I am worried that the academy's defense will be greatly weakened, so I rejected Teacher Wenji's good intentions. Li Er's eyes focused and said in a deep voice, Yes, Mr. Li Gang's worries are not without reason. I originally planned to only send a few dozen guards to send you to the north. Now that the Tang Empire and the Turks are at daggers drawn, it is hard to guarantee that the thief Xieli will not attack you and the academy. Speaking of this, Li Er stood up and paced back and forth with his hands behind his back. Then, he said, How about this? I will let the two brothers of the Dugu family lead 1,000 imperial guards to follow you to Bingzhou and Yunzhou. I will also order the commandant of the two prefectures to protect you. As the ruler of the Tang Empire, Li Er certainly had the ability to send more people to protect the safety of Li Tai and the rest. However, the academy was only going to deploy the telegraph relay station and not to the front line. If he sent too many troops, it would be suspicious of mobilizing the army. Moreover, Li Tai and the rest were still in the Tang Empire's territory. The probability of encountering danger was relatively small. After the Turk wolf cavalry sneaked into the Tang Empire, the northern border was now heavily guarded. It would be difficult to repeat the situation of 50,000 wolf cavalry entering the pass last time. Therefore, Li Er only sent 1,000 imperial guards to accompany Li Tai to the north. This was not a small number. With 1,000 imperial guards and the cooperation of the local prefectures, Li Tai and the rest would not encounter any danger unless the Turks gathered their forces and directly went to war with the Tang Empire. Thank you, father. Li Tai hurriedly clasped his hands and thanked him. Go and pay respects to your mother. Li Er waved his hand. Suddenly, he thought of something and hurriedly stopped Li Tai, saying, Wait, Qinke, after paying respects to your mother, send a message to Li Zishuan and remind him not to forget what he promised me yesterday. He was naturally referring to Li Zishuan's call for merchants to donate military funds to the imperial court. Hearing this, Li Tai looked puzzled and said, "Yes, father. It's just that. This son doesn't know what matter Imperial Father is talking about?" Li Er blushed and said, "It's just a small matter. Just say it like that. Li Zishuan will definitely understand what I mean." Li Er felt that this kind of thing was too degrading to his identity as the emperor. There was no need to say it in front of Li Tai. Seeing that Li Er was unwilling to say, Li Tai did not probe further. He clasped his hands and said, "Yes, father. If there is nothing else, I will take my leave." Li Er nodded and his expression returned to normal. Chapter 1740. Clang, clang, clang. In the evening, when the sun was setting, the sound of a golden gong could be heard from the Black Armored Army's camp in the northwest of Chang'an City. The soldiers who were sweating profusely on the drill ground heaved a sigh of relief. The sound of the gong signaled the end of the day's tough training. "Listen up, everyone. Disperse, eat and return to camp. Soldiers on night duty, prepare to patrol after dinner." Sun Jiping, who was in full armor, shouted at the soldiers in front of him. "Yes, sir." In the scorching summer, the group of people who were wearing airtight plate armor had long been soaked through from the heat. In addition, after a day of high-intensity military training, they were simply exhausted, and all of them were so hungry that their stomachs were growling. At this moment, when they heard Sun Jiping announce that they were disbanding, all of the soldiers could not help but shout out in agreement. Then, everyone took off their helmets at the same time and let out a long breath. As the new armor made by the workshop was connected to the whole body, it was more troublesome to put it on or take it off. It was impossible to do it in a short period of time. Now they had more important things to do, eat. Therefore, they didn't have time to take off their armor. For a group of people who had been training for the whole day, eating was the most important thing. "Xiaoxian, let's go. Let's go eat." Qing Chumo rushed over with Yuqi Baolin, and said to Li Zishuan anxiously. Although these two unlucky children were both descendants of military families, and Qing Chumo had personally been on the battlefield before, their equestrian archery skills were nothing to write home about. In the morning, they had not passed the Black Armored Troops' equestrian archery test, so in the afternoon, Sun Jiping really did not let them eat. This made the two children starve to death. Fortunately, after a period of emergency training in the afternoon and under the guidance of Li Zishuan and Sun Jiping, Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin finally grasped all the tricks and passed the Black Armored Army's equestrian archery test. Otherwise, these two unlucky kids wouldn't have dinner. Now that it was finally time for lunch, Qing Chumo wished he could grow a pair of wings and fly straight to the Wu Battalion's kitchen. However, he had never been to the Black Armored Army's camp before, and he didn't have the chance to have lunch either. Therefore, he had no choice but to drag Li Zishuan along. "Why are you in such a hurry? It's not like the kitchen is short on food for the two of you." Li Zishuan rolled his eyes and said grumpily. Even though he said that, he still led Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin to the kitchen of the Wu Battalion. "Xiaoxian, it's easy for you to say that. You may have eaten lunch, but Baolin and I are still hungry. I feel like I can eat an entire cow right now. I don't care anymore, I want to eat meat." Qing Chumo dragged Li Zishuan along as he ran, his mouth chattering nonstop. Hey, wrong. Over here. Do you know the way or not?" It was just that this fellow was walking in the wrong direction. They were heading to the Ding Battalion. Li Zishuan had no choice but to shake off Qing Chumo's paw and lead the way. On the drill ground, Sun Jiping looked at the backs of the three of them as they left. He couldn't help but shake his head. Actually, he was just about to invite Li Zishuan to have dinner with him. As a senior general in the army, under non-wartime circumstances, he wouldn't usually share a big pot of food with a normal soldier. Although it wasn't to the extent of being given preferential treatment, but in terms of the variety and quantity of food, it was much better than a normal soldier. But seeing Li Zishuan being dragged away by Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin, Sun Jiping gave up on the idea of inviting Li Zixuan for dinner. After a moment of hesitation, he also followed behind the three of them and walked towards the kitchen of the Wu battalion. On the other side, Li Zixuan led Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin to the kitchen of the Wu battalion at the speed of the wind. At this time, there was already a long queue. But it couldn't really be considered a long queue because they arrived earlier. There were only a dozen people in front of them. This Wu battalion's kitchen is quite big, huh? I wonder if there's meat for dinner. Qing Chumo looked at the wooden and brick kitchen in front of him and couldn't help but lick his lips and say. The biggest fear of fire in the military camp was that the soldiers were strictly forbidden from cooking in private. There was only one place to cook, and that was the kitchen. Taking into account the number of soldiers eating and the fact that the kitchen itself had to be fireproof, the kitchen in the military camp was built with bricks and wood instead of tent. If the army was marching outside, there wouldn't be so many rules. The soldiers would usually just eat dry rations or cook in the open air. After the expansion of the Black Armored Army, there were a total of 5,000 people. It wasn't realistic for so many people to rely on one kitchen to provide food. Therefore, every battalion had their own kitchen. The rice, noodles, vegetables and meat were all distributed centrally. As for the allocation of cooks, it was about one cook for every 10 people. To be precise, it was the Cook's Army. The famous general of the Ming Dynasty, who fought against the Japanese, Qi Jiguang, was originally from the Cook's Army. Because in ancient times there wasn't gas, liquefied gas, electrical appliances, steam boxes and so on. One person needed to burn firewood to prepare the food for 10 people was already the limit. Therefore, in the past dynasties there were usually 10 or 15 people to a single kitchen. In the Wu battalion, there were still 2 hours before the end of the afternoon training. The Cook's Army had already stopped the training in advance and went to prepare the food. Therefore, when Qing Chumo and the others arrived, the Cook's Army was already in the kitchen getting food for the soldiers. While Qing Chumo was waiting anxiously, the soldiers in front of him finally got their food. Qing Chumo quickly took out the big bowl that he had just received. It was a very big porcelain bowl, about the same size as the soup bowl used to hold vegetables, and shouted to the cook who was getting the food, "Brother, get more meat, I haven't eaten lunch yet." The cook looked at Qing Chumo and said indifferently, "There's no meat for dinner in the army, only for lunch." Huh? Qing Chumo was dumbfounded. He had been hungry for the whole day, and now that he could finally eat, he couldn't eat any meat. Wasn't this asking him to die? Ignore him, just get more food for him. Li Zixuan, who was standing behind Qing Chumo, couldn't help but say to the cook. He was mainly worried that Qing Chumo was wasting time here and the soldiers would have a problem with him. Yes, join the army. The cook recognized Li Zixuan. After all, they had just had extra training today. Hearing this, he quickly took the big bowl from Qing Chumo's hand and started to fill it with food. After a while, 3 people walked out from the group with big bowls filled with food. There were so many people in the army, there was definitely no place for them to sit down and eat. All the soldiers squatted in groups of 3 to 5 in the open space in front of the kitchen and started to eat. The Black Armored Army is the #1 cavalry force in Tang Empire. Why can't they provide meat for 2 meals a day? How are we going to eat without meat? Looking at the white rice and green vegetables in his bowl, Qing Chumo couldn't help but sigh. Li Zixuan glared at this idiot and said unhappily, "Are you going to eat or not? If you're not eating, you're going to give your food to Baolin. You still have the energy to complain. I think you're not hungry, right?" On the other side, Yuqi Baolin was hugging his bowl of rice and began to eat heartily, huffing and puffing. Grumble, grumble, grumble. At this moment, Qing Chumo's stomach started to grumble again. He quickly said, "Eat, eat, eat. Who said I'm not eating? I've been hungry for the whole day. Even if it's white rice, old Qing, will eat it. Delicious, really delicious." Chapter 1741. Firstly, there was no meat or fish in the army's food. Secondly, it was a big pot of rice. Naturally, there was little oil and water. It was bland and tasteless. But to these rough men who had trained hard all day, this bland and tasteless food was the only way to maintain their strength and life. Hence, the empty space outside the kitchen was filled with the sound of food being eaten. Other than Ching Chumo, no one else complained that the food was not tasty. Although Li Zishuan's family was extremely wealthy in this life, and he lived a life of luxury, he wasn't a pampered young master who couldn't endure hardships. After all, in his previous life, he was a village boy through and through. When he was young, he suffered a lot. Therefore, although the military food was bland and tasteless, to him, it was still barely edible. During the day, although he did not train for the whole day like Ching Chumo, but he still had to observe the training situation of each battalion and learn the training methods of each battalion. These were also very physically and mentally draining. After a whole day, his stomach was not light. "Field officer's son, why are you here today?" Just as everyone was burying their heads in eating, Li Zishuan suddenly heard the cook who had served them food earlier speak up. "Why can't I be here? Get me a bowl of food." The person who had come was Sun Jiping. Facing the cook's surprise, he did not say much and directly handed over the bowl of food in his hands. Yes, field officer's son." The cook was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He quickly took the bowl of food and bent over to get some for Sun Jiping. "Ha ha! Join the army, Chumo Bao Lin, you don't mind if I eat with you, right?" After a while, Sun Jiping walked over to Li Zishuan with a bowl of food and said with a smile, "Humph! This is Field Officer Sun's territory. If Field Officer Sun wants to come, who would dare to object?" Before Li Zishuan could say anything, Ching Chumo couldn't help but speak first, his voice dripping with sarcasm. This guy did not get to eat lunch and was still angry. After all, in the black armored troops, they only had meat in the afternoon. He had missed out on lunch and would not be able to make up for it at night. It was really a huge loss. "You brat, can't food shut your mouth?" Li Zishuan glared at Ching Chumo, then looked at Sun Jiping and said, "Jiping, since you're here, let's eat together. Thank you for joining the army." Sun Jiping smiled. He did not take Ching Chumo's mockery to heart. In other words, he had a general impression of Ching Chumo's character before this. "I heard from that guy's tone that you didn't eat here often, Jiping?" Li Zishuan asked as Sun Jiping squatted down. Although he had listened to Li Jing's military books for most of the day, there were still many things he did not understand about the military. If he did not understand, he could just ask. Sun Jiping replied as he ate, "The generals in the army usually have their meals alone. The people in the kitchen will send the food over after it's done." Ching Chumo's eyes lit up and said, "Doesn't that mean that Field Officer's son can eat meat every meal?" This fellow did not like to eat meat before, but he was so tired on his first day in the army camp. If he did not eat meat, how could he survive on a vegetarian diet? So when he heard Sun Jiping's words, he immediately became excited, completely forgetting that he had mocked Sun Jiping earlier. "That's not true. Actually, the meals of the generals in the army are similar to yours. They only have meat in the afternoon. The only difference is that the food is more exquisite, there is more food, and there is no need to queue for food." Sun Jiping shook his head and said, "Oh, I didn't expect the meals of the black armored troops to be so mediocre." Ching Chumo's face was filled with disappointment when he heard this, and he muttered. Sun Jiping thought for a moment and said, "Chumo, today is different from the past. Now, all the soldiers in the capital are nervously training and preparing for war. The consumption of grain, vegetables, and meat everywhere is an astronomical figure. It is not easy for the imperial court to guarantee that the soldiers have a meal of meat every day. We can't ask for more." At this time, Li Zishuan was almost done with his meal. Hearing this, he pondered for a moment and said, "Jiping is right. Right now, we're only preparing the army for war. When the imperial court attacks the prairie one day, we'll need more food. No one knows how long this war will last, so it is not wrong to be frugal now. Qing Chumo replied. He probably felt that Li Zishuan's words made sense, so he lowered his head and ate without saying another word. Field officer, after today's observation, do you have any thoughts on the training of the black armored troops in the future? Sun Jiping took 2 mouthfuls of food and wolfed it down like Qing Chumo. Then, he raised his head and asked. Li Zishuan put down his bowl and moved a rock over to sit on it. He thought for a moment and said, I saw the training of the soldiers in the morning. I've seen the soldiers training during the day. Generally speaking, the black armored troops' training should be the same as before. But now that the soldiers are all wearing new armors, it's no longer appropriate to use the old training methods. Come to my tent later and I will explain to you in detail. As for the improvement of the training methods, I will suggest some ideas. Help me check them out. After all, you have been in the army longer than me. Due to various reasons, Li Zishuan had already taken Sun Jiping as his confidant. This was an inexplicable trust, but at the same time, this trust was not mixed with any benefits, so it was more reliable. With Sun Jiping as his confidant, he could discuss tactics anytime and anywhere. To Li Zishuan, who had just joined the black armored troops, this was already a very good start. Field officer, you are exaggerating. I am not qualified to check for you. At most, I will give you some suggestions. Facing Li Zishuan, Sun Jiping was actually a little restrained. Part of it was because of his status, but more importantly, Li Zishuan's superb martial arts skills. After all, the army had always respected the strong. Li Zishuan's strength was worthy of his respect. Haha. Ixian and I are like brothers. You used to be his subordinate. Now that we are fellow soldiers, there is no need to be so formal. If you continue to be like this, how can I trust you with my back when we are on the battlefield? Just call me Xiao Xian from now on, just like Chumo. Li Zishuan's eyes were like torches. How could he not see Sun Jiping's restraint? He laughed and patted Sun Jiping's shoulder. I wouldn't dare. Sun Jiping was shocked. He hurriedly put down his bowl and cupped his fists towards Li Zishuan. What's there to be afraid of? We are all in the same battalion, so we are brothers. Look at Xiao Xian and me. Although we are his personal guards on the surface, we still quarrel in private and do whatever we want. Lieutenant, you're not a man at all when you're being so restrained. Qing Chumo grinned and patted Sun Jiping's shoulder. Li Zishuan smiled and said, Chonyo is right. Although we are superior and subordinate in the army, this does not prevent us from calling each other brothers in private. What do you think? Seeing Li Zishuan and Qing Chumo being so friendly and natural, Sun Jiping's eyes flashed with envy. After hesitating for a long time, he clasped his fists and said, Then I will accept your invitation. Haha, that's how it should be. Qing Chumo laughed and said, Then next time if I don't pass the exam, Lieutenant Sun, don't punish me by starving me. We are brothers after all. No. Military orders cannot be disobeyed, military rules cannot be changed. Before Qing Chumo could finish, Sun Jiping said coldly with a straight face. Qing Chumo immediately choked on his word. Haha. Li Zishuan could not help but smile. Then he scolded Qing Chumo jokingly. Looks like Chonyo is full now, or else why would you start to talk? It's still early, why don't you go to the drill ground later? Not full? Who said I'm full? I'll go get another bowl of food. Qing Chumo suddenly felt as if his tail had been stepped on. He quickly got up and ran towards the kitchen. Chapter 1742. After dinner, the sky gradually darkened, but it was not completely dark yet. In the Black Armored Army's camp, all the soldiers returned to rest. Of course, other than the soldiers patrolling the camp. Although the military camp was located in Chang, and city and would not encounter any enemy attack in the middle of the night. The guards in the military camp did not relax at all. This was not only to maintain the vigilance of the soldiers, but also to prevent thieves from sneaking into the military camp. Isn't it too early for them to rest? As a member of the army, Li Zixuan had his own tent. At this moment, when he saw Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin taking off their armor and getting ready to sleep, he could not help but sigh. It was almost 6 or 7 o'clock at night in modern times. If they were to sleep now, how could they possibly fall asleep? Although Li Zixuan had not been in the army in his previous life, he had participated in military training in university. At that time, they had gone through a month of intensive military training in a military camp. It could be said that they had experienced military life for almost a month. At that time, they would stand at attention and train in formation during the day. However, at night they did not immediately rest after dinner. Usually, after dinner, everyone would gather together to practice formations or military boxing. If they still had time after practice, they would do what many people liked the most: singing. The so-called singing was the practice of singing lyrics between different formations. It was mainly to boost the soldiers' morale and the spirit of fighting for first place. There were only a few kinds of lyrics for singing. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we waited so hard. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, we waited so anxiously. I asked you to sing, but you didn't sing. Why are you so shy, like a big girl, and so on. Although the lyrics for singing were simple and crude, there was a hot-blooded atmosphere in the army. It was easy to be influenced by it. At that time, the students who participated in the military training were all shouting louder than the other. Everyone's faces and necks were all red. Now that Li Zixuan thought about it, he could not help but feel nostalgic. That was why he felt that the soldiers of this era, who did not need to patrol, slept too early at night. What? Early? It's almost 7 o'clock. Is it early? And it's already dark. What else can we do other than sleep? Qing Chumo glared and muttered. Then he reached out to take off his shoes and said, "Alas! This military camp is not as good as the academy. It doesn't even have a light source. It's too dark. F***ck. Stop it, you bastard." While they were talking, Li Zixuan suddenly covered his nose and said angrily to Qing Chumo, "You've been training for a whole day, and you haven't even washed your feet. How are you going to sleep with this stench? Go and wash up. Baolin, you go wash up too." The moment Qing Chumo took off his shoes, a thick stench spread throughout the tent. That stench could definitely make the 5 venomous creatures avoid it and make demons bow their heads. He was still breathing, unparalleled in the world. Even though Li Zixuan wasn't a clean freak, he obviously had better conditions to fight for. There were several wells in the black armored troops camp. Why should he endure such influence? Xiao Xian, if you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten. Wait here. I'll go wash up with Baolin. Qing Chumo scratched his head awkwardly. Then he put on his shoes and got up to call Captain Qi Baolin. Then he seemed to have thought of something and asked, "Oh, right. Xiao Xian, where's the well?" "Go straight out and turn left. Then you'll see it." Li Zixuan waved his hand. Qing Chumo grinned and answered. Then he carried the wooden bucket and left the tent with Yuqi Baolin. Li Zixuan took out the military book, Mirror of the 6 Armies, that Li Jing had given him yesterday and started reading it under the dim light. In the YY novels from his previous life, when the main character transmigrated to ancient times and entered the military camp, the first thing he did was to kill the troublemakers. Then he shook his body and released his domineering aura, attracting the admiration of many little fans. After that, the main character would use some of the military training methods from his previous life. He would be instantly shocked and become the god of war. Looking at it this way, it was easy for a modern person to lead an army in ancient times. But was that really the case? Obviously not. First of all, the people of ancient times weren't fools. Where there were people, there would be Jianghu. It was impossible to make everyone in the army submit to you just by showing off your domineering aura. Secondly, any change that deviated from reality was bound to end in failure. Li Zishuan paid close attention to the black armored troops camp and the training of the soldiers. He wanted to understand the training methods of the soldiers of this era, especially the heavy cavalry. Only then could he make targeted suggestions for improvement. Therefore, in ancient times, leading an army to war was not easy. May I ask if the commander is in the tent? Sun Jiping would like to see him. Just as Li Zishuan was immersed in Li Jing's world of military strategy, a man's voice came from outside the tent. It was Sun Jiping. Li Zishuan immediately came back to his senses. He kept the military book and turned his head to the outside of the tent. Come in. Yes, sir. As soon as he finished speaking, Sun Jiping lifted the curtain and walked in from outside. Jiping, you're here? There are no outsiders here, so there's no need for formalities. Have a seat. Li Zishuan pointed at the mat opposite him and smiled at Sun Jiping. Thank you. After the conversation at dinner, Sun Jiping, Li Zishuan, Qing Chumo, and the others had quietly become closer. Therefore, Sun Jiping did not stand on ceremony and sat directly opposite Li Zishuan. Then he took out the wooden box beside him and said, "There is no meat for dinner in the army. I reckon that Chumo and Bao Lin are not full yet, so I brought some food from the kitchen. Commander, don't worry. These are all extra meals today, and they won't violate the military rules." Where are Chumo and Bao Lin? Speaking of this, Sun Jiping looked at the tent and could not help but wonder. Although Li Zishuan had asked Sun Jiping to address each other as brothers during dinner, Sun Jiping still had some respect for Li Zishuan and did not dare to call him by his name. Calling him commander was already his limit. The two of them went out and will be back in a while. Li Zishuan replied and then said, "If the two of them knew that you brought food for them, they would be overjoyed. But this kind of thing should not happen again. Being in the army, you shouldn't act like you're special. It's easy to be criticized." These words were not only for Sun Jiping's sake, but also Qing Chumo and Yuqi Bao Lin's. This general understands. Sun Jiping cupped his fist and replied. Li Zishuan nodded. He pondered for a moment and then said seriously, "Jiping, you came at the right time. During the day, I saw the training of the Black Armored Army and have some questions. You can help me solve them." Chapter 1743. Sir, please speak. In the tent, Sun Jiping clasped his fists towards Li Zishuan. First question, which of the 5 battalions of the Black Armored Army has the strongest combat power? Li Zishuan asked in a low voice. Sun Jiping replied without hesitation, "Based on the current situation, within the Black Armored Army, the A Battalion is undeniably the strongest. This is because the A Battalion has the most original Black Armored Army soldiers and their coordination in battle formations is the best. As for the other 4 battalions, most of them are new recruits. Before this, although they were all elites of their respective guards, they were not familiar with each other and their coordination was not good enough." "I see." Li Zishuan nodded his head thoughtfully. During the day, when he was inspecting the military camp and inspecting the training of the soldiers, he had noticed that the training of the soldiers of the battalion was the most outstanding. No matter if it was battle formation training or equestrian archery training, they all felt very relaxed when they trained, as if they didn't take the training seriously at all. As for the soldiers of the other battalions, they would more or less make some mistakes in their training. This was already very telling. After a moment of silence, Li Zishuan continued to ask, "Other than the E Battalion, do you know about the other 4 battalions? How are they like?" As the Black Armored Army's adjutant, Li Zishuan's main task was to coordinate the daily training of the soldiers of the different battalions. In the future, he would have to interact with the commanders of the other battalions. As the saying goes, know thyself and know thy enemy. Sun Jiping's face darkened. After a moment of thought, he replied, I have just joined the Black Armored Army and have only interacted with the other 4 battalions on official matters. I have not interacted with them personally and can only give you a general overview. Li Zishuan nodded. Sun Jiping began to explain. The lieutenant of the A Battalion is Zhang Shigui. If you know anything about the Black Armored Army before joining the army, you should have heard of him. Zhang Shigui was one of the earliest generals of the Black Armored troops. He fought bravely and had been through hundreds of battles. He had participated in battles such as eliminating Wang Shichong and defeating Dou Jianda. In the entire Black Armored troops, other than General Duan and General Qiu, he had the highest prestige. In the time that this general has been in the Black Armored Army, I have not had any direct contact with Zhang Shigui. The only time I met him was a month ago in the commander's tent. At that time, General Qiu, 2nd Battalion Lieutenant Sun Tao, and 3rd Battalion Lieutenant Zhang Kongyan were all strongly opposed to the Black Armored Army changing into the new equipment that you were about to bring. They said that the country war was imminent and it was not appropriate to seek for new equipment. Otherwise, the Black Armored Army's battle prowess would be greatly reduced and they would not be able to contend against the Turkic Wolf cavalry. However, General Duan and Zhang Shigui stood firmly on Kunjan's side at that time. They believed that the Black Armored troops were no longer as strong as they used to be. If they wanted to form a fighting force in a short period of time, they had to change. Moreover, General Duan had already experienced the power of the new armor. After a heated discussion, General Duan stood his ground and decided to introduce the new equipment. He also decided that the moment Kanjun joined the Black Armored Army, he would hand over the responsibility of overseeing the training of the soldiers to you. Li Zishuan was enlightened. He nodded thoughtfully and sighed. I didn't expect that before I came, so many people in the Black Armored Army were already against me. But from the looks of it, Zhang Shigui should be on General Duan's side, while 2nd Battalion Lieutenant Sun Tao and 3rd Battalion Lieutenant Zhang Kongyan should be on General Qiu's side. Hearing this, Sun Jiping's gaze turned cold. He didn't dare to make another sound. There were definitely issues regarding factions in the military, but everyone had a tacit understanding. No one would openly speak of it like Li Zishuan. This was a taboo, and once it was heard by outsiders, it was very likely that it would become a source of gossip. However, from this, it could be seen that Li Zishuan really treated him as a trusted aide. Otherwise, he wouldn't have said such things in front of him. Ahem. Alright, I understand now. Jiping, you can continue. Li Zishuan also realized that he had lost his composure. He coughed dryly and waved his hand. Sun Jiping straightened his face and continued. 2nd Battalion Lieutenant Sun Tao was originally a general of the Black Armored Army. After the expansion of the Black Armored Army, he was appointed as the 2nd Battalion Lieutenant. This person is arrogant and unruly. During the day, Duan Zishuan had introduced Li Zishuan to the generals of the different battalions. However, the introduction back then was too rough. Now, with Sun Jiping's explanation, Li Zishuan had a rough understanding of the other 4 battalions of the Black Armored Army. At the very least, he had a rough understanding of their personalities. 1st Battalion Lieutenant Zhang Shigui was a man of few words. However, he fought bravely and belonged to the practical faction. In terms of factions, Zhang Shigui was on Duan Zishuan's side. 2nd Battalion Lieutenant Sun Tao was an arrogant person. Now that he had been appointed, he was a little arrogant and belonged to Qiu Xingong's faction. 3rd Battalion Lieutenant Zhang Kongyan was a smiling tiger. Qiu Xingong's faction was a military general. He welcomed everyone with a smile. However, it was hard to say if he would stab someone in the back. Li Zishuan felt that this kind of personality was more suitable to be an official and not a military general. 4th Battalion Lieutenant Liu De was a man of few words. His faction was unclear. However, he was resolute in his work and was strict in his management of the army. The soldiers under him were also very hard-working in their training. As for the 5th Battalion Lieutenant Sun Jiping, Li Zixuan already had a good understanding of him. From these introductions, Li Zixuan had a rough understanding of the power distribution of the Black Armored Army. He also had a rough idea of who he should put in important positions and who he should be wary of in the future. I understand now. After thinking about it for a while, Li Zixuan looked at Sun Jiping and smiled. It's all thanks to you. If not for you, it would have been impossible for me to understand the situation within the Black Armored Army without 3 to 5 days. And in these 3 to 5 days we can do a lot of things. You're too kind, sir. Sun Jiping quickly clasped his fist. Regarding the training of the soldiers of each battalion, I have some ideas after today's visit, Li Zixuan suddenly said. The current training method of the Black Armored Army should still be the same as before. In my opinion, the current training method only focuses on form and not intention. Sun Jiping's interest was piqued. He asked, Sir, what do you mean by that? Li Zixuan smiled and explained, What I mean is that the current training method of the Black Armored Army is too focused on form. Whether it is the military drill or the riding and archery assessment, these can only improve the soldiers' individual skills. However, can these skills be used to fight on the battlefield? No. If the Black Armored Army wants to be the #1 heavy cavalry of the Tang Empire, it should be focused on killing and breaking through enemy lines. I can't feel any killing intent from the current Black Armored Army. At most, they are like a group of tigers that are locked in a cage and trained all day long to perform. This is not what I want to see. I believe His Majesty doesn't want to see this either. Therefore, there must be a change. Sun Jiping frowned. After thinking for a while, he nodded and said, I seem to have the same feeling too. May I ask, how should we change? Chapter 1744. Rome wasn't built in a day. Our Tang Empire's cavalry has been using this training method for a long time. If we suddenly make a big change, I'm afraid there will be a lot of opposition. Especially in the Black Armored Army, there are many people who don't like me. Therefore, I plan to try out the change in the training method on a small scale. Since he had decided to make Sun Jiping his trusted aide, Li Zixuan had nothing to hide from him. His gaze darkened as he spoke bluntly. Sun Jiping pondered for a moment and understood what Li Zixuan wanted to say next. Therefore, he cupped his fists and said, I'm willing to open the way for you and be the vanguard. Sun Jiping was grateful that Li Zixuan trusted him so wholeheartedly. He didn't want to form a clique in the Black Armored Army, but he also understood the principle of, where there are people, there will be conflicts. If he didn't form a clique, others would do so and isolate him from the other guards. Therefore, it was better to hold on to Li Zixuan. Not only could he stabilize his position in the Black Armored Army, but he could also help Li Zixuan to control the entire Black Armored Army as soon as possible. Haha, good. Hearing this, Li Zixuan couldn't help but feel very happy. He looked at Sun Jiping and said firmly, Since you trust me so much, then I won't let you down. Don't worry, the training methods that I'm going to propose are all carefully thought out and tested. Although I don't dare to say that they are the best in the world, but they are definitely many times better than the current training methods. Oh right, Jiping, you are now the lieutenant of the Wu Battalion. Are the soldiers under your command disciplined? He was worried that Sun Jiping had just joined the Black Armored Army. Even if he became the lieutenant of the Wu Battalion, his subordinates might not be obedient to him. Sun Jiping smiled confidently and said, You can rest assured about this. As long as you don't violate military orders, my words are still effective in the Wu Battalion. Before coming to the Black Armored Army, Sun Jiping was a member of the Imperial Guard. He definitely had the qualifications. Moreover, his martial arts strength was also quite good. If not, he would not have been appointed by Duan Zhishuan as an adjutant of the Wu Battalion. Of course, the most important thing was that the soldiers of the Wu Battalion were all new recruits who had just joined the Black Armored Army. Otherwise, no matter how experienced Sun Jiping was, it would be hard for him to convince them. Li Zishuan nodded and said, Since that's the case, I'm relieved. Tomorrow, I will summon all the generals of the 5 battalions to my tent for a discussion, and I will tell them about my modified training method. I don't care about other people's opinions, but you have to stand on my side. At worst, I will start with the trial in the Wu Battalion, and after some results, even if other people are against it, they will still have to follow my new training method. Seeing Li Zishuan's solemn vow, Sun Jiping cupped his fists and said, This general obeys. Hey, Xiao Xian, let me tell you, the water in the well is really King cool. Why don't you? At this moment, Qing Chumo and Yuchi Baolin entered the tent, carrying wooden buckets. When they saw Sun Jiping sitting inside, Qing Chumo couldn't help but be taken aback. A moment later, he reacted and dryly coughed. Ahem. Field Officer Sun is here? Sun Jiping stood up and nodded. He then looked at Li Zishuan and cupped his fist. If there's nothing else, this general will take his leave. Go ahead. Li Zishuan nodded and said. Sun Jiping then turned and left. As Xiao Xian, why is Sun Jiping here? After Sun Jiping left, Qing Chumo immediately came over and asked curiously. Li Zishuan rolled his eyes and pointed at the wooden box on the table. There, he was worried that you two didn't have enough for dinner, so he brought you some food. What? There's such a good thing? Qing Chumo's eyes suddenly lit up. Without any explanation, he rushed to the table next to him and opened the food box. He immediately saw a few plates of fragrant dishes and 2 big bowls of rice inside. He couldn't help but laugh and say, Hee hee. I couldn't tell that this field officer's son was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He punished me and Baolin cleanly during the day, and he even brought us food at night. Old Qing, will recognize this brother of mine. With that, he picked up his chopsticks and started eating again. Brother Chonyo, I didn't have enough for dinner either. Leave some for me. Yuchi Baolin saw this and quickly came over. Speaking of which, if he didn't take the initiative at this time, Qing Chumo probably wouldn't even leave him a bowl of rice. Faced with these 2 buffoons, Li Zishuan could only smile helplessly. He thought to himself, these 2 kids are famous popinjays in the capital. Why do they look like they haven't eaten before? Beep beep beep. Just as Li Zishuan was about to continue reading his military books, the wooden box at his bedside rang. It was the sound of the telegraph inside. This time, he entered the military camp with the telegraph so that he could communicate with the outside world. If something happened at the academy or at home, he could be the first to know and deal with it, right? Li Zishuan quickly got up and strode to the bedside. He took out the telegraph and placed it on the table. Is it Green Sparrow? Did something happen at the academy? After listening for a while and learning the identity of the sender, Li Zishuan couldn't help but frown as he muttered to himself. At the same time, he casually sent a message to confirm the sender's identity, informing Li Tai that he had received it. Soon, the telegraph rang again. Beep 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 beep. Li Zishuan listened quietly without taking notes. His spiritual power was strong enough to translate while listening. Gradually, his expression relaxed. Because the content of the telegram had nothing to do with the academy. Yamacho, Tai plans to leave for the north tomorrow. Today, I'm going to the palace to bid farewell. Father asked Tai to tell you not to forget what you promised yesterday. Remember? The content of the telegram was very brief. Li Zishuan quickly understood what Li Tai meant, but he couldn't help but feel a little puzzled. Li Er asked him not to forget what he promised yesterday. What did he promise old Li yesterday? Li Zixuan's thoughts involuntarily flew back to the conversation with Li Er at Qin Qiong's house yesterday, so it's about this. A moment later, Li Zixuan finally came to a realization. He understood why Li Er was looking for him. Beep beep beep, I know. Be careful on your way north. Li Zixuan, who came back to his senses, sent a message back to Li Tai. The other side quickly replied with a beep beep beep, yes, Yamacho, and the telegraph went completely silent. Xiaoxian, whose telegram is it? Qing Chumo, who was at the side, asked while eating. When Li Zixuan received the telegram just now, the two of them deliberately lowered the sound of their eating so as not to disturb Li Zixuan. Now that the telegram was received, they could finally eat without restraint. Qinke. Li Zixuan replied casually, and then said unhappily, "You two hurry up and eat, then go to sleep. The training in the Wu Battalion tomorrow will be much more intensive than today." Huh? You want to increase the training tomorrow? Qing Chumo was dumbfounded. Li Zixuan couldn't be bothered with him, and began to think about how to solve the problem that he promised Li Er yesterday. Chapter 1745. In the tent, Qing Chumo and Yuchi Baolin continued to eat. They had already eaten their fill, but when they heard Li Zixuan say that they would increase their training tomorrow, they couldn't help but feel a little hungry. The two of them immediately felt even more motivated to eat. They looked like they wouldn't stop until they had finished all the food in their boxes. They weren't afraid of indigestion at all. Li Zixuan, after a long moment of thought, turned on the telegraph and sent out another message. Beep beep beep. Chang'an, king of Shu's residence. Ever since Li Ku had been crowned king of Shu several months ago, he had moved out of the imperial palace. In the last few days, he and Li Junxian had been busy setting up the gold-clothed guards for the Yanhuang Bank. He had just eaten dinner and had just bathed and changed his clothes. As he was reading in his study, he suddenly heard a beeping sound coming from a wooden box on a nearby bookshelf. Could it be a message from Yamacho? As a student of Yanhuang College, Li Ku was naturally very familiar with this beeping sound. When he had gone north to exterminate the locusts, he had helped Li Zixuan manage the telegraph. Now that Li Ku was in charge of the Yanhuang Bank, Li Zixuan had given him a telegraph for daily communication purposes. In truth, with Li Zixuan's wealth and the Academy's current technology, he could mass-produce telegraph machines. However, the number of telegraph machines in the Great Tang could be counted on one's fingers. The Academy had one, the workshop had one, the Imperial Palace had one, the Marquis residence had one, Li Tai had one, Li Ku had one, and Li Zixuan had one. There were two reasons why they hadn't mass-produced telegraph machines. One reason was that there was no need, and the other was that Li Zixuan had too many telegraph machines, which could lead to the leak of technical secret. After all, it was much easier to keep a secret with 7 telegraph machines than with 70. However, if the imperial court needed a large number of telegrams, such as when the war between the Great Tang and the Turks was about to break out, with the technological foundation of the Strange Taste Pavilion, they were completely capable of producing dozens of telegrams in just a few days for the army to use. In the study of the king of Shu's mansion, Li Ku walked quickly to the bookshelf and placed the wooden box on the desk. He took out the telegraph and began to record the code skillfully. It really is Yamacho. A moment later, Li Ku confirmed the identity of the person on the other end of the telegraph. He was suddenly energized and quickly replied a string of codes to confirm his identity with Li Zixuan. Beep beep beep. A moment later, the telegraph machine rang again. This time, the ringing lasted for more than 15 minutes. Li Ku used a pencil to write down 2 pages of code on the rice paper. Only then did the beeping sound of the telegraph machine gradually stop. Li Ku hurriedly took the password book from the bookshelf and began to translate the code sent by Li Zixuan. He did not have Li Zixuan's monstrous memory, who could translate the code in his mind while listening to it. Little Ku, the kingdom war is imminent. Yesterday, I promised His Majesty to gather all the merchants of Great Tang to gather military funds for the country. However, I am currently in the military and cannot travel. I can only entrust this matter to you. Tomorrow, go to my residence to find your mistress and ask for the seal of the flaming yellow Chamber of Commerce. After that, go find a member of the Chamber of Commerce, Lin Wenyuan, and ask him to help you complete this matter. You are talented and intelligent. I believe that you will be able to complete this task. After about 5 minutes, Li Ku heaved a sigh of relief. He had finally finished translating. Looking at the content on the rice paper, Li Ku fell into deep thought. Chapter 1746. Li Zishuan had imitated the Gothic armor of the 15th century. As a masterpiece of medieval plate armor, although the Gothic armor covered the entire body, it only weighed 25 kilograms. There were no steel plates in the joints or inside the shoulder pads, allowing the limbs to move more freely. In the era of cold weapons, the Gothic armor was invincible in terms of defensive power. Speaking of armor, the heavy cavalry of Europe had to be mentioned. Whether it was the Milan armor or the Gothic armor, they were all tailor-made for heavy cavalry. Knights in the Middle Ages were basically heavy cavalry. They had been trying their best to wear thicker and heavier armor. A complete set of medieval knight armor could protect the knight from his teeth to his toes. It was as if the knight was encased in a metal bucket or sealed in a specially designed can. This was the true definition of armed to the teeth. Their strong mobility and agility gave them great tactical and strategic significance. As the pinnacle of the cold weapons era, the heavy cavalry was the pinnacle of cavalry. With a strong defense and a fearsome impact, this type of troop could be considered the ultimate force on the battlefield. Generally speaking, once a general decided to send the heavy cavalry into the battlefield, it meant that the war had reached the most critical moment. Generally speaking, even if the knights were constantly in a rain of spears, it was not necessarily that dangerous. This armor could be said to be airtight in terms of defense. No matter how the wind blew or the rain fell, it would not move. For knights, the real danger did not come from direct confrontation. For example, the rain of arrows shot by the enemy archers or the spear formation of the infantry. The arrows shot by the archers often had a hard time penetrating the armor of the knight. Even if they did, they would at most scratch the surface of the skin. Once during the Crusades, the English knights were ambushed by the Arabs. The Arabs shot arrows from afar, but the only defense the English knights could make was to raise their shields and maintain a tight formation. The spears used by the infantry were usually made of wood. The knights could easily break these cheap spears with their momentum. In reality, as long as they were on horseback, the heavy cavalry in heavy armor could not be defeated in a direct confrontation. On the battlefield, they were like an armored tank, able to move unhindered and rampage. They were practically invincible. This was also why Li Zishuan had chosen to create a new set of plate armor for the Black Armored Army. The Black Armored Army was the most elite heavy cavalry of the Tang Dynasty. If they were equipped with the toughest armor of the medieval era, as long as they were properly trained, the 5,000 Black Armored Army would be able to quickly adapt to the new equipment. By then, they would be practically invincible. When that time came, the Turkic Wolf cavalry would definitely not be a match for the Black Armored Army. Unless the 5,000 Black Armored Army were exhausted or lost their rations, these 5,000 heavy cavalry would definitely be an invincible existence in this era. But then again, it wasn't as if they were invincible just by wearing the new armor. To a soldier, advanced equipment was just an external source of strength. Whether or not they could fully utilize this external source of strength depended on scientific training. Li Zishuan was currently combining the training methods of the medieval era with the Black Armored Army's training manual. During the day, Li Zishuan had been observing the Black Armored Army's training for the entire day. He had a rough understanding of the training methods of the Black Armored Army. In summary, there were only 2 points. military formation training and equestrian training. Li Zixuan felt that this was far from enough. He wanted to improve the training methods of the Black Armored Army. Heavy Cavalry Training Manual? At 5:45 a.m., physical fitness training. All soldiers will wear their armor and run 10 li. Those who fail to complete it in half an hour will be fined 5 li. Those who fail to complete the 5 li within 15 minutes will not be allowed to have lunch. At 7 o'clock a.m., martial arts training. All soldiers will be armed with wooden spears and battle in their armor. A martial arts competition will be held every 7 days. Those who come in first will be rewarded handsomely. At 9 o'clock a.m., arm strength training. The training includes but is not limited to push-ups and pull-up. There will be 100 push-ups and 15 pull-up. Those who fail to complete the training will be given additional training every day. Those who fail to complete the training after 5 days will be expelled from the Black Armored Army. After lunch, all soldiers will rest for an hour. At 5 o'clock p.m., formation training will be held. This includes individual formation training and military posture training. The formation training will last for 2 hours. At 5 o'clock p.m., cavalry training will be held. All soldiers will wear their armor and horse armor. They will practice the art of charging. Everyone will follow orders and be in sync. Those who do not meet the requirements will be given additional training on the same day. The cavalry training will last for 3 hours. At 5:45 p.m., equestrian archery training will last for an hour. At 7 o'clock p.m., all soldiers will have lunch. At 5:45 p.m., all soldiers will wear their armor and run 10 li. Those who fail to complete the training in half an hour will be fined 5 li. After that, they will rest in their tents. This, joining the army? Forgive me for being blunt. Since the establishment of the Black Armored Army, there has never been such a ridiculous training method. What the hell is push-ups? What are pull-ups? Also, the Black Armored Army is cavalry, not infantry. Why do they need long-distance running and combat training? This is ridiculous. The next day, Li Zixuan summoned all the captains of the 5 battalions to the side tent next to the main tent. Then, he took out the results of his hard work last night and let the 5 captains read it one by one. Although some of the captains were illiterate, some of them read it out for him in a low voice. After everyone had read the contents of the heavy cavalry drill, a tall and strong middle-aged man saluted Li Zixuan with an ugly face. Li Zixuan's gaze sharpened as he looked at the burly man in front of him. When these 5 people had entered the tent just now, they had all introduced themselves. Li Zixuan naturally knew the identity of this person. He was the 2nd Battalion's lieutenant, Sun Tao. Li Zixuan had expected this guy to be the first to speak up. Sun Tao was a staunch supporter of the Hill Protector faction, while Li Zixuan was on Duan Zixuan's side. Speaking of which, it was all thanks to Sun Zhiping telling him about the factions within the Black Armored Army last night. Otherwise, he would have been caught off guard in this situation. Captain Sun has never seen these training methods. How can you be so sure that they are useless to the Black Armored Army? Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it is useless. There are too many things in this world that you haven't seen. Since Li Zixuan was sure that this guy was a staunch supporter of the Hill Protector faction, he didn't hold back. He sneered and mocked Sun Tao. Chapter 1747. You. In the tent, Sun Tao was enraged by Li Zixuan's blatant mockery. He was a veteran who had been in the Black Armored Army for 7 to 8 years. Who would dare to disrespect him? Even Duan Zixuan rarely spoke to him in such a tone. Now that he was being mocked by Li Zixuan, a brat who had just joined the army, how could he tolerate it? He immediately exploded. His face was red with anger and his eyes were wide open as he glared at Li Zixuan. Humph! No matter how useless this general is, I have been in the army for more than 10 years. I have even been in the Black Armored Army for 8 years. In terms of military experience, I'm afraid I'm not inferior to Sir Consul, am I? Tit for tat. The atmosphere in the tent suddenly froze. Li Zixuan looked at Sun Tao with a smile, while Sun Tao looked at Li Zixuan angrily. The two of them did not give in to each other's gazes. It could be said that they were at daggers drawn. Speaking of which, Sun Tao had originally planned to maintain a harmonious relationship with Li Zixuan on the surface. Even if he did not want to deal with Li Zixuan on the surface, he did not want to fall out with Li Zixuan on the surface. After all, other than the fact that he was a consul, Li Zixuan's background in the imperial court was too powerful. However, Li Zixuan's mockery just now made Sun Tao completely lose his mind. What did he mean by "there are many things that he has not seen"? He was, after all, a veteran in the army. What right did Li Zixuan, a rookie, have to criticize a veteran like him? He admitted that he was indeed inferior to Li Zixuan in other aspects. However, in terms of military experience, he would never bow down to Li Zixuan. For Li Zixuan to say that he was incompetent in this aspect was a great insult to him. For this reason, he did not mind falling out with Li Zixuan openly. After all, he had the upper hand and was not afraid of Li Zixuan secretly taking revenge. After all, Qiu Xingong was backing him up. Sun Jiping saw the tense atmosphere and couldn't help but tighten his grip on the sword at his waist. No matter what, he would definitely stand firmly on Li Zixuan's side. If Sun Tao dared to make any moves against Li Zixuan, he would not hesitate to draw his sword and stop him. Although this would be against the military rules, Sun Jiping would not hesitate. Ahem. Field Officer Sun, Sir Consul, please don't be angry. We are all fellow soldiers. Why should we fall out over such a small matter? Just as the temperature in the tent dropped to freezing point, another middle-aged officer standing beside Sun Tao stepped forward. He first patted Sun Tao's arm and then smiled at Li Zixuan. Sir Consul, you may not know this, but Field Officer Sun has been in the Black Armored Army for 8 years. Although he may not be an experienced veteran, he has at least been through dozens of battles. Field Officer Sun is usually an upright person and does not know how to be flexible with his words. If he offends the consul, I hope that the consul will forgive him. You. In the tent, Sun Tao was enraged by Li Zixuan's blatant mockery. After all, he was a veteran who had been in the Black Armored Army for 7 to 8 years. Who around him dared to disrespect him? Even Duan Zixuan rarely spoke to him in such a tone. Now that he was being mocked by Li Zixuan, a brat who had just entered the army, how could he tolerate it? He immediately exploded. His face was red and his eyes were wide open. He glared at Li Zixuan and said, No matter how incompetent I am, I have been in the army for more than 10 years. I have even been in the Black Armored Army for 8 years. In terms of military experience, I am afraid that I am not inferior to the consul. Tit for tat. The atmosphere in the tent suddenly froze. Li Zixuan looked at Sun Tao with a smile, while Sun Tao looked at Li Zixuan angrily. The two of them did not give in to each other's gazes. It could be said that they were at loggerheads. Speaking of which, Sun Tao had originally planned to maintain a harmonious relationship with Li Zixuan, this parachuted recruit on the surface. Even if they didn't want to deal with each other in secret, he didn't plan on falling out with Li Zixuan on the surface. After all, other than his identity as a recruit, Li Zixuan's background in the imperial court wasn't too powerful. However, Li Zixuan's mockery just now made Sun Tao completely lose his mind. How could it be called, "There are many things that he has not seen"? He was, after all, a veteran in the army. What right did Li Zixuan, a new recruit, have to criticize him, a veteran? He admitted that he was indeed inferior to Li Zixuan in other aspects. However, in terms of military experience, he would definitely not lower his head to Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan saying that he was not good in this aspect was a great insult to him. For this reason, he did not mind falling out with Li Zixuan on the surface. In any case, he was in the position and was not afraid of Li Zixuan secretly taking revenge. After all, Qiu Xingong was supporting him. Sun Jiping, who was at the side, saw the tense atmosphere and could not help but tighten his grip on the sword at his waist. No matter what, he would definitely stand firmly on Li Zixuan's side. If Sun Tao dared to make any moves against Li Zixuan, he would not hesitate to draw his sword and stop him. Although this move would violate the military rules, Sun Jiping still did not hesitate. Cough cough. Field Officer Sun, Sir Consul, please do not be angry. We are all fellow soldiers, why should we harm our relationship over such a small matter? Just as the temperature in the tent dropped to freezing point, another middle-aged general standing beside Sun Tao stepped forward. He first patted Sun Tao's arm, then smiled and cupped his fists towards Li Zixuan. Sir Colonel, you may not know this, but Field Officer Sun has been in the Black Armored Army for 8 years. Even if I can't say that I have experienced hundreds of battles, I still have at least dozens of them. Field Officer Sun is usually an upright person and doesn't know how to be flexible with his words. If he has offended the Colonel, please forgive this lowly one's offense. You. In the side tent, Sun Tao was enraged by Li Zixuan's blatant mockery. He was a veteran who had been in the Black Armored Army for 7 to 8 years, who around him did not respect him. Even Duan Zixuan rarely spoke to him in such a tone. Now that he was being mocked by Li Zixuan, a brat who had just entered the army, how could he tolerate it? He immediately exploded. His face was red and his eyes were wide open. He glared at Li Zixuan and said, No matter how useless I am, I have been in the army for more than 10 years. I have even been in the Black Armored Army for 8 years. In terms of military experience, I am afraid that I am not inferior to Sir Consul. Tit for tat. The atmosphere in the tent suddenly froze. Li Zixuan looked at Sun Tao with a smile, while Sun Tao looked at Li Zixuan angrily. The two of them did not give in to each other's gazes. It could be said that they were at daggers drawn. Speaking of which, Sun Tao had originally planned to maintain a harmonious relationship with Li Zixuan on the surface. Even if he did not want to deal with Li Zixuan on the surface, he did not want to fall out with Li Zixuan on the surface. After all, other than his identity as a consul, he did not want to offend Li Zixuan on the surface. However, Li Zixuan's mockery just now made Sun Tao completely lose his mind. What did he mean by "there are many things that he has not seen"? No matter what, he was still a veteran in the army. What right did Li Zixuan, a new recruit, have to criticize a veteran like him? He admitted that he was not as good as Li Zixuan in other aspects. However, in terms of military experience, he would definitely not lower his head to Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan saying that he was not good in this aspect was a huge insult to him. For this reason, he did not mind falling out with Li Zixuan on the surface. After all, he was in the position and was not afraid of Li Zixuan secretly taking revenge. After all, Qiu Xingong was supporting him. Sun Jiping, who was at the side, saw the tense atmosphere and could not help but tighten his grip on the sword at his waist. No matter what, he would definitely stand firmly on Li Zixuan's side. If Sun Tao dared to make any moves against Li Zixuan, he would not hesitate to draw his sword and stop him. Although this move would violate military rules, Sun Jiping still did not hesitate. Cough cough. Field Officer Sun, Sir Colonel, please don't be angry. We are all fellow soldiers, why should we harm each other over such a small matter? Just as the temperature in the tent dropped to freezing point, another middle-aged officer who was standing beside Sun Tao stood out. He first patted Sun Tao's arm and then smiled at Li Zixuan as he clasped his fist and said, Sir Colonel, you may not know this, but Field Officer Sun has been in the Black Armored Army for 8 years. Although he may not be an experienced veteran, he has at least experienced dozens of battles. Field Officer Sun is usually an upright person and does not know how to be flexible in his words. If he offends you, please forgive me. You. In the tent, Sun Tao was enraged by Li Zixuan's blatant mockery. He was a veteran who had been in the black armored army for 7 to 8 years, who around him did not respect him. Even Duan Zixuan rarely spoke to him in such a tone. Now that he was being mocked by Li Zixuan, a brat who had just joined the army, how could he tolerate it? He immediately exploded. His face was red and his eyes were wide open. He glared at Li Zixuan and said, No matter how useless I am, I have been in the army for more than 10 years. I have even been in the black armored army for 8 years. In terms of military experience, I am afraid that I am not inferior to Sir Colonel. Tit for tat. The atmosphere in the tent suddenly froze. Li Zixuan looked at Sun Tao with a smile, while Sun Tao looked at Li Zixuan angrily. The two of them did not give in to each other's gazes. It could be said that they were at daggers drawn. Speaking of which, Sun Tao had originally planned to maintain a harmonious relationship with Li Zixuan on the surface. Even if he did not want to deal with Li Zixuan on the surface, he did not want to fall out with Li Zixuan on the surface. After all, other than his identity as a colonel, he did not want to offend Li Zixuan on the surface. However, Li Zixuan's mockery just now made Sun Tao completely lose his mind. What did he mean by "there are many things that he has not seen"? No matter what, he was still a veteran in the army. What right did Li Zixuan, a new recruit, have to criticize a veteran like him? He admitted that he was indeed not as good as Li Zixuan in other aspects. However, in terms of military experience, he would definitely not bow down to Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan said that he was not good in this aspect. To him, it was a great insult. For this reason, he did not mind falling out with Li Zixuan on the surface. Anyway, he was in the position and was not afraid of Li Zixuan secretly taking revenge. After all, Qiu Xingong was backing him up. Sun Jiping, who was at the side, saw the tense atmosphere and could not help but tighten his grip on the sword at his waist. No matter what, he would definitely stand firmly on Li Zixuan's side. If Sun Tao dared to make any moves against Li Zixuan, he would not hesitate to draw his sword and stop him. Although this move was against military rules, Sun Jiping still did not hesitate. Cough cough. Field Officer Sun, Sir Colonel, please don't be angry. We are all fellow soldiers. Why should we harm our friendship over such a small matter? Just as the temperature in the tent dropped to freezing point, another middle-aged general standing beside Sun Tao stepped forward. He first patted Sun Tao's arm, then smiled and cupped his fists towards Li Zixuan. Sir Colonel, you may not know this, but Field Officer Sun has been in the black armored army for 8 years. Although I can't say that he has experienced hundreds of battles, he has at least experienced dozens of battles. Field Officer Sun is usually an upright person and doesn't know how to be flexible with his words. If he has offended the colonel, please forgive this lowly one's offense. You. In the side tent, Sun Tao was enraged by Li Zixuan's blatant mockery. He was a veteran who had been in the black armored army for 7 to 8 years, who around him did not respect him. Even Duan Zixuan rarely spoke to him in such a tone. Now that he was being mocked by Li Zixuan, a brat who had just joined the army, how could he tolerate it? He immediately exploded. His face was red and his eyes were wide open in anger. He looked at Li Zixuan and said, No matter how useless I am, I have been in the army for more than 10 years. I have even been in the black armored army for 8 years. In terms of military experience, I am afraid that I am not inferior to Sir Colonel. Tit for tat. The atmosphere in the tent suddenly froze. Li Zixuan looked at Sun Tao with a smile, while Sun Tao looked at Li Zixuan angrily. The two of them did not give in to each other's gazes. It could be said that they were at daggers drawn. Speaking of which, Sun Tao had originally planned to maintain a harmonious relationship with Li Zixuan, this parachuted recruit on the surface. Even if he didn't want to deal with Li Zixuan in the dark, he didn't plan on falling out with Li Zixuan on the surface. After all, other than his identity as a recruit, Li Zixuan's background in the imperial court wasn't too powerful. However, Li Zixuan's mockery just now made Sun Tao completely lose his mind. What did he mean by "there are many things that he has not seen"? No matter what, he was still a veteran in the army. What right did Li Zixuan, a new recruit, have to criticize a veteran like him? He admitted that he was not as good as Li Zixuan in other aspects, but in terms of military experience, he would definitely not lower his head to Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan saying that he was not good in this aspect was a huge insult to him. For this reason, he did not mind falling out with Li Zixuan on the surface. After all, he was in the position and was not afraid of Li Zixuan secretly taking revenge. After all, Qiu Xingong was backing him up. Sun Jiping, who was at the side, saw the tense atmosphere and could not help but tighten his grip on the sword at his waist. No matter what, he would definitely stand firmly on Li Zixuan's side. If Sun Tao dared to do anything to Li Zixuan, he would not hesitate to draw his sword and stop him. Although this action would violate military rules, Sun Jiping still did not hesitate. Cough cough. Field Officer Sun, Sir Colonel, please don't be angry. We are all fellow soldiers, why should we harm our friendship over such a small matter? Just as the temperature in the tent dropped to freezing point, another middle-aged officer who was standing beside Sun Tao stood out. He first patted Sun Tao's arm and then smiled at Li Zixuan. He clasped his fist and said, "Sir Colonel, you may not know this, but Field Officer Sun has been in the Black Armored Army for 8 years. Although he may not have experienced hundreds of battles, he has at least experienced dozens of battles. Field Officer Sun is usually an upright person and does not know how to be flexible with his words. If he has offended the Colonel, please forgive this lowly one." Chapter 1748. Push-ups are a way to train your shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, your body needs to be in a straight line from your shoulders to your ankles. Both arms should be placed on your chest, with the distance between your hands slightly wider than your shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support your body as you go up and down. 1 round trip counts as 1. 100 rounds is a pass. Just like this. In the tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of the push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the rest while demonstrating it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes. Because none of them had personally experienced such a training method, they didn't know how effective it would be. For a moment, no one commented on it. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan berating Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan was still fresh in their mind. At this moment, no one was willing to put themselves in danger. As for pull-ups, you need to grab onto a fixed beam with both hands. The beam should be slightly taller than your height. After grabbing onto the beam, you need to rely entirely on the strength of your arms to pull your body up. Similarly, 1 round trip counts as 1 round. 15 rounds is a pass. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't demonstrate it himself. He could only use words and some simple body movements to explain it. Push-ups are a way to train your shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, your body needs to be in a straight line from your shoulders to your ankles. Both arms should be placed on your chest, with the distance between your hands slightly wider than your shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support your body as you go up and down. 1 round trip counts as 1 round trip. 100 rounds is a pass. Just like this. In the tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of the push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the rest while demonstrating it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes. Because none of them had personally experienced such a training method, they didn't know how effective it would be. At this moment, no one commented on it. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan berating Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan was still fresh in their mind. At this moment, no one was willing to put themselves in danger. As for pull-ups, you need to grab a fixed beam with both hands. The height of the beam is slightly higher than your height. After grabbing the beam, you need to rely on the strength of your arms to pull your body up. Similarly, one up, one down, and one back and forth is counted as one round. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he could not give a personal demonstration. He could only use words and some simple body movements to explain. Push-ups are a training method to train the shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, the body needs to be in a straight line from the shoulders to the ankles. Both arms should be placed on the chest and the distance between the hands should be slightly wider than the shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support the body as it goes up and down. One round trip counts as one round. Just like this. In the tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of the push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the rest while demonstrating it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes. Because none of them had personally experienced such a training method, they didn't know how effective it would be. At this moment, no one commented on it. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan berating Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan was still fresh in their mind. At this moment, no one was willing to put themselves in danger. As for pull-ups, you need to grab a fixed beam with both hands. The height of the beam is slightly higher than your height. After grabbing the beam, you need to rely on the strength of your arms to pull your body up. Similarly, one up, one down, and one back and forth is counted as one round. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't do it himself. He could only use words and some simple body movements to explain it. Push-ups are a training method to train the shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, the body needs to be in a straight line from the shoulders to the ankles. Both arms should be placed on the chest and the distance between the hands should be slightly wider than the shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support the body up and down. One round trip is counted as one round. 100 rounds is a pass. Just like this. In the tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of the push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the rest while demonstrating it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes. Because none of them had personally experienced such a training method, they didn't know how effective it would be. At this moment, no one commented on it. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan scolding Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan was still vivid in everyone's mind. At this time, no one wanted to get into trouble. As for pull-ups, you need to grab a fixed beam with both hands. The height of the beam is slightly higher than your height. After grabbing the beam, you need to rely on the strength of your arms to pull your body up. Similarly, one up, one down, and one back and forth is counted as one round. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't do it himself. He could only use words and some simple body movements to explain it. Push-ups are a training method to train the shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, the body needs to be in a straight line from the shoulders to the ankles. Both arms should be placed on the chest and the distance between the hands should be slightly wider than the shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support the body as it goes up and down. One round trip counts as one round. Just like this. In the tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the others. At the same time, he demonstrated it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes. Because none of them had personally experienced this training method, they didn't know how effective it was. For a moment, no one made any comments. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan scolding Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan was still vivid in everyone's mind. At this time, no one wanted to get into trouble. As for pull-ups, you need to grab a fixed beam with both hands. The height of the beam is slightly higher than your height. After grabbing the beam, you need to rely on the strength of your arms to pull your body up. Similarly, one up, one down, and one back and forth is counted as one round. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't demonstrate it himself. He could only use words and some simple body movements to explain it. Push-ups are a training method to train the shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, the body needs to be in a straight line from the shoulders to the ankles. Both arms should be placed on the chest and the distance between the hands should be slightly wider than the shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support the body as it goes up and down. One round trip counts as one round. Just like this. In the tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the others. At the same time, he demonstrated it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes. Because none of them had personally experienced this training method, they didn't know how effective it was. At this time, no one made any comments. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan scolding Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan was still vivid in their mind. At this time, no one wanted to bump into the muzzle of a gun. As for pull-ups, you need to grab onto a fixed beam with both hands. The beam should be slightly taller than your height. After grabbing onto the beam, you need to grab onto the floor to support your body. One round trip counts as one round trip. 15 rounds counts as one round trip. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't demonstrate it himself. He could only use words and some simple body movements to explain it. Push-ups are a training method to train the shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, the body needs to be in a straight line from the shoulders to the ankles. Both arms should be placed on the chest and the distance between the hands should be slightly wider than the shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support the body as it goes up and down. One round trip counts as one round. Just like this. In the tent of the Black Armored Army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the others while demonstrating it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes in surprise. Because none of them had personally experienced this training method, they didn't know how effective it would be. For a moment, no one made any comments. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan scolding Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan was still vivid in their mind. At this time, no one wanted to bump into the muzzle of a gun. As for pull-ups, you need to grab onto a fixed beam with both hands. The beam should be slightly taller than your height. After grabbing onto the beam, you need to grab onto the floor to support your body. One round trip counts as one round trip. 15 rounds counts as one round trip. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't demonstrate it to everyone. He could only explain it with words and some simple body movements. Push-ups are a training method to train the shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, the body needs to be in a straight line from the shoulders to the ankles. Both arms should be placed on the chest and the distance between the hands should be slightly wider than the shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support the body as it goes up and down. One round trip counts as one round. just like this. In the tent of the black armored army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the others while demonstrating it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes in surprise. Because none of them had personally experienced this training method, they didn't know how effective it would be. At this time, no one made any comments. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan scolding Sun Tao and Zhang Kangyan was still vivid in everyone's mind. At this time, no one wanted to get into trouble. As for pull-ups, you need to grab onto a fixed beam with both hands. The beam should be slightly taller than your height. After grabbing onto the floor to support your body, you need to grab onto the floor to support your body. 1 round trip counts as 1 round trip. 15 rounds counts as 1 round trip. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't demonstrate it to everyone. He could only explain it with words and some simple body movements. Push-ups are a training method to train the shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, the body needs to be in a straight line from the shoulders to the ankles. Both arms should be placed on the chest and the distance between the hands should be slightly wider than the shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support the body as it goes up and down. 1 round trip counts as 1 round. Just like this. In the tent of the black armored army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of the push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the others while demonstrating it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes in surprise. Because none of them had personally experienced this training method, they didn't know how effective it would be. For a moment, no one made any comments. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan scolding Sun Tao and Zhang Kangyan was still vivid in everyone's mind. At this time, no one wanted to get into trouble. As for pull-ups, you need to grab onto a fixed beam with both hands. The beam should be slightly taller than your height. After grabbing onto the floor to support your body, you need to grab onto the floor to support your body. 1 round trip counts as 1 round trip. 15 rounds counts as 1 round trip. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't demonstrate it to everyone. He could only explain it with words and some simple body movements. Push-ups are a training method to train the shoulders, arms, and waist. During the training, the body needs to be in a straight line from the shoulders to the ankles. Both arms should be placed on the chest and the distance between the hands should be slightly wider than the shoulders. Both palms should be placed on the ground to support the body as it goes up and down. 1 round trip counts as 1 round. Just like this. In the tent of the black armored army, Li Zixuan was explaining the essentials of the push-ups to Zhang Shigui, Sun Tao, and the others while demonstrating it himself. It was the first time for everyone to see such a strange movement. They couldn't help but widen their eyes in surprise. Because none of them had personally experienced this training method, they didn't know how effective it would be. At this time, no one made any comments. After all, the scene of Li Zixuan scolding Sun Tao and Zhang Kangyan was still vivid in everyone's mind. At this time, no one wanted to get into trouble. As for pull-ups, you need to grab onto a fixed beam with both hands. The beam should be slightly taller than your height. After grabbing onto the floor to support your body, you need to grab onto the floor to support your body. 1 round trip counts as 1 round trip. 15 rounds counts as 1 round trip. Seeing that no one spoke, Li Zixuan continued his explanation. However, there was no horizontal bar in the tent, so he couldn't demonstrate it to everyone. He could only explain it with words and some simple body movements. Chapter 1749. The kinetic energy formula in physics tells us that if you want to increase the kinetic energy of an object, you have to work on speed and mass. For heavy cavalry, the warhorse's speed is relatively stable. Thus, if you want to increase kinetic energy, you have to work on mass. For individual cavalry, the way to increase mass is to increase armor. This way, you can increase both the impact and defense. It can be said to be killing two birds with one stone. Moreover, heavy cavalry was developed according to this train of thought. However, compared to cavalry as a whole, the way to increase mass is to increase the number of cavalry. The impact of a massive heavy cavalry formation is not inferior to a modern armored formation. Thus, regardless of east or west, heavy cavalry formations are shockingly similar. China's armored cavalry and iron stupa all pursue a powerful impact to crush the opponent. In the Song Dynasty, the Jin Dynasty's heavy cavalry unit, Guzi Ma, in order to increase the impact of the heavy cavalry formation, they were even connected by iron chains. As for the West, due to the importance of cavalry's impact, they placed far more importance on their mobility. Thus, the greatest characteristic of heavy cavalry tactics is their cohesion. Cavalry battles are the same as infantry. Both sides are arranged in a neat formation to charge at each other. In order to demonstrate this simple tactic, maintaining a neat formation is extremely important for heavy cavalry. This is extremely rare in light cavalry tactic. The heavy cavalry group charging tactic was the key for an army to form a powerful first assault force. Under normal circumstances, the attacking side would use the heavy cavalry formation to directly tear apart the opponent's first or second defensive formation, providing the conditions for the following troops to join in the battle. As early as the 8th century AD, the heavy cavalry of the Carolingian dynasty started using cavalry formation to charge. Ever since the fall of the Roman Empire, Charlemagne established the Carolingian army with heavy cavalry as the core. In every battle, they have performed well. The Carolingian cavalry was the first recorded unit to use heavy cavalry to charge. The classic charging action is to hold the javelin horizontally, using the warhorse's speed to imbue the javelin with great impact, causing great damage to the opponent. Therefore, a strong shoulder and arm strength was absolutely necessary for a heavy cavalry. Of course, in addition to this, heavy cavalry also had to have a certain level of close combat skills. This was because when the impact tactic tore apart the enemy's defensive line, the heavy cavalry needed to engage in close combat with the scattered enemy. Regarding this point, the Western heavy cavalry history was especially crazy. According to records, during the Middle Ages in France, where heavy cavalry tactics were prevalent, one of the qualifications for a knight was to fight with a wild boar barehanded without any armor. Only by killing the wild boar could one pass. This was also the reason why the cavalrymen of Abba tried their best to avoid close combat with the Crusaders. Due to the almost crazy pursuit of individual combat skills, the Western heavy cavalry used a large number of competitions to maintain combat skills when there was no war. This kind of competition later developed into an important social activity, an important means to win honor, solve disputes, and even attract the opposite sex. Li Zishuan had referred to the charging tactics of the Western heavy cavalry in the Middle Ages and combined them with the current situation of the Tang Empire. He had come up with a training manual for the black armored army. It might not be the best, but it was definitely the most suitable for the current black armored army. Chapter 1750. Good. Since Jiping trusts me so much, I won't let you down. In the tent of the black armored army, Sun Jiping stepped forward and took the lead in accepting the new drill. Although this was a prearranged scene, Li Zishuan still clapped his hands excitedly and said, "From today onwards, all the soldiers of the Wu Battalion will start training according to the new drill. I will supervise and guide the whole process. I believe that in less than half a month, the results will be seen." "Yes, sir." Sun Jiping clasped his fist and said loudly. Li Zishuan glanced at Sun Jiping and Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan and said, "2nd and 3rd battalions will train according to the previous method. After half a month, we will see the results of the Wu Battalion's training. Then you too can decide if you want to accept the new drill. Even though I won't force you on this matter, I still have to remind the two of you that the Black Armored Army has only been expanded for a short period of time. The training will affect the reputation of the Black Armored Army over the past decade. The war 2 months later will affect the survival of the Great Tang. I hope that the two of you won't mix your personal feelings with this matter and ruin the reputation and glory of the Black Armored Army over the past decade. Li Zishuan's words clearly had a hidden meaning. Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan's expressions froze when they heard this, their faces filled with embarrassment. But at this time, they couldn't say anything, because this kind of matter would only make things worse. Li Zishuan looked at Zhang Shigui and Luda. These two didn't belong to any specific faction and should be able to persuade them. He thought for a while and said, "General Zhang, Lieutenant Lu, what's your decision?" In the tent, everyone's eyes focused on Zhang Shigui and Luda. After a moment of silence, Zhang Shigui clasped his fist and said, "I think the new drill is feasible. I'm willing to accept the new training method on behalf of the soldiers of the 1st Battalion." As one of the earliest generals of the Black Armored Troops, Zhang Shigui was still able to differentiate between the importance of the situation. Although most of the soldiers in the A Battalion were veterans of the Black Armored Troops, they were all wearing the new plate armor and wielding vanadium steel horse lances. Different equipment would lead to different training methods and battle strategies. Zhang Shigui thought about it seriously and realized that if the Black Armored Troops wanted to quickly adapt to the new equipment, they would have to follow Li Zishuan's training methods. That was why he stood out to support Li Zishuan. Good. Li Zishuan's spirit shook as he nodded approvingly. Seeing that Zhang Shigui had expressed his stance, Luda also bowed to Li Zishuan and clasped his fist. "I'm willing to accept the new training method on behalf of the soldiers of the 4th Battalion." Luda was considered a veteran of the Black Armored Army. However, the 4th Battalion under him were almost all new recruits who had just joined the Black Armored Army. New recruits and new equipment. If they wanted to quickly develop their combat strength, they had to use the new training method. Of course, the most important thing was that Luda had always respected Zhang Shigui. Since Zhang Shigui had agreed to the new drill method compiled by Li Zishuan, then what was there to hesitate about? As long as it could help the soldiers of the 3rd Battalion increase their combat strength, there was nothing that Luda couldn't agree to. He wasn't loyal to Qiu Xingong, nor was he loyal to Duan Zhishuan. He was only loyal to Li Er. Seeing that Luda had also stood out to express his willingness to accept the new drill method, Li Zishuan couldn't help but be overjoyed. Before this, he had already prepared for the worst, which was that only Sun Jiping stood out to support him. The other 4 strongly opposed the new drill method. But he didn't think that the final result would far exceed his expectations. Out of the 5 captains, 3 of them were actually willing to support him. How could he not be overjoyed? Good. I am indebted to the 3 of you for your trust. Since that's the case, then from today onwards, the soldiers of the Black Armored Army's 1st Battalion, 4th Battalion and 5th Battalion will all strictly implement the new drill method. Those who train diligently will be heavily rewarded. Those who slack off and cheat will be severely punished and will not be tolerated. Li Zishuan was energized. Looking at the crowd, he spoke with full vigor. "As you wish." Zhang Shigui, Luda and Sun Jiping clasped their fists and replied in unison. "Good. Then everyone will follow your own plans and return to the barracks to arrange the training for the soldiers." Li Zishuan waved his hands and ordered them to leave. The main thing was that it was getting late and the soldiers should be training. Yes. The 5 of them each had their own thoughts as they clasped their fists and left. Half an hour later, all the soldiers of the Black Armored Army gathered on the drill ground once again. A day of training had begun. But today's training was a little different. All soldiers of the 1st Battalion, attention! Turn to the left. Run 5 laps around the drill ground. If you don't finish within half an hour, you will be punished with 2 extra laps. In the past, at this time, the soldiers of the Black Armored Army would start their training in formation. But today was different. Following Zhang Shigui's series of orders, all the soldiers of the 1st Battalion were stunned. Run 5 laps around the drill ground? What's going on? Why do we have to run today? But we are all wearing armor right now. How are we going to run? The Black Armored Army's drill ground took up a huge area. 1 lap was at least 2 miles long. 10 laps would be more than 10 miles long. Logically speaking, 10 miles of running wasn't a difficult task for the soldiers of the Black Armored Army. But they were all wearing heavy armor right now. How are we going to run? Hence, the soldiers of the 1st Battalion looked at each other, not knowing what to do next. What are you all standing there for? Do you think it's too long? Everyone, record down. If you don't finish the 5 laps in half an hour, you will be punished with 2 extra laps. If you don't finish after 2 laps, you will not be allowed to eat lunch. Zhang Shigui's face was cold as he shouted loudly in the face of the soldiers' discussion. Yes. The soldiers were startled, and they hurriedly started to run. The soldiers of the Black Armored Army weren't alone. After they got up and started running, the 4th and 5th Battalions followed closely behind. After the initial shock and disbelief, the 3,000 soldiers of the Black Armored Army began a vigorous and exhausting day under the morning sun. Isn't that Zhang Shigui? What's he doing with his men? Qiu Xingong, who had just finished his breakfast and came to the drill ground to observe the training, saw the 3,000 soldiers running around the drill ground. He couldn't help but frown and ask curiously, "Go and call Zhang Kongyan over." After thinking for a moment, Qiu Xingong ordered his personal guard behind him. It was a little unrealistic to ask someone to call Zhang Shigui over directly. Firstly, Zhang Shigui wasn't on his side. Secondly, Zhang Shigui's seniority and status in the Black Armored Army was not lower than his. If he sent someone to call Zhang Shigui over, Zhang Shigui would probably ignore him. Hence, he could only call his little brother Zhang Kongyan. "Yes, sir." The personal guard cupped his fists and left. Chapter 1751. General, I heard you were looking for me? On the side of the Black Armored Army drill ground, 3rd Camp Lieutenant Zhang Kongyan ran over to greet Qiu Xingong. Qiu Xingong nodded. Perhaps he realized that this wasn't the place to talk. After all, the soldiers of the Black Armored Army were still training. He turned around and led Zhang Kongyan towards the tents outside the drill ground. As he walked, he asked, "What's up with the A.D. and V camps today? Why didn't they follow the usual practice?" At this time, Zhang Kongyan wiped the sweat on his forehead and hurriedly replying to the general, "Adjunctly made a new training manual last night. Zhang Shigui, Lu De, and Sun Jiping are now leading the soldiers to train according to the new training manual." New training manuals? Qiu Xingong was stunned when he heard this. Then, he suddenly had a bad premonition, so he quickly asked, "What new training manual?" Li Zishuan just joined the army for a day. How could he come up with new training manuals? Tell me what the new training manuals are about. Zhang Kongyan pondered for a moment and said, "Early this morning, Adjunctly asked all the commanders of the 5 camps to go to the side tent for a meeting. He showed us his new training manuals. The first rule of the new training manuals is long-distance running." As Zhang Kongyan explained, Qiu Xingong's face turned darker and darker. After Zhang Kongyan finished, Qiu Xingong finally couldn't hold it in anymore and exploded. "Bastard! Nonsense! The Black Armored Army is cavalry. Why would they practice long-distance running? Why would they practice martial arts? And what are these push-ups and pull-ups? I've never heard of them before. What's even more ridiculous is that Li Zixuan is a brat who doesn't know anything about military affairs. He just joined the army and he's already causing trouble. Why would Zhang Shigui, Lu De, and the rest follow suit? No, if this continues, the Black Armored Army will be ruined by Li Zixuan. Order Zhang Shigui, Lu De, and Sun Jiping to stop running and resume their usual training. Qiu Xingong's anger was justified. Before Li Zixuan came to the camp, he had been in charge of the daily training of the Black Armored Troop. In the end, Li Zixuan had only been in the Black Armored Troops for a day, and he had already overthrown the training system that he had painstakingly built. How could he not be angry? Furthermore, in his view, Li Zixuan's new training method was completely ridiculous. If they were to continue training like this, the Black Armored Army would become the laughingstock of Great Tang. However, Zhang Kongyan did not immediately relay Qiu Xingong's order. Instead, a troubled look flashed across his face. After a moment of hesitation, Zhang Kongyan said with a troubled expression, "General, I'm afraid this is inappropriate." If one were to differentiate between civil and military, Zhang Kongyan would be more of a civil official than a military general. This fellow was extremely quick-witted. Compared to his ability in civil affairs, his military strength was simply trash. Thus, he had always been Qiu Xingong's think tank. Hearing this, Qiu Xingong frowned and said unhappily, "What's inappropriate about it?" Zhang Kongyan's brows furrowed as he explained, replying to the general, after Adjunct Li finished introducing his new training drill this morning. He claimed that he wouldn't force the battalion commanders to train their soldiers according to his drill, that it would all be voluntary. Zhang Shigui, Lu De, Sun Jiping, and the others, they all voluntarily accepted the new training drill. "General, if you order them to stop training now, I don't think they would listen." "Outrageous! Do you think they would dare to disobey my orders?" Hearing this, Qiu Xingong was instantly enraged. Zhang Kongyan immediately kept quiet out of fear, not daring to utter a single word. Sigh. "Forget it, I'll go look for General Duan. Li Zixuan, this brat, this old man has really underestimated him. This old man has truly underestimated him. I can't let him continue messing around like this." After a moment, Qiu Xingong probably felt that Zhang Shigui and the rest might really dare to disobey his orders, so he sighed and changed his words. After all, Duan Zixuan had said yesterday that he would hand over the daily training of the Black Armored Troops to Li Zixuan. Even if Zhang Shigui and the rest did not listen to his orders, it was understandable. General is wise. Zhang Kongyan clasped his fist and flattered him. "You and Sun Tao did well. On this matter, you can't mess around with Li Zixuan. You go and lead the training. I'll go look for General Duan." Qiu Xingong looked at Zhang Kongyan and waved his hand. "Yes, sir." Zhang Kongyan accepted the order and left. Qiu Xingong stood there for a while before walking towards the commander's tent. Half a month ago, the Black Armored Troops had entered a state of closed training. Under normal circumstances, they were only allowed to enter and not leave the camp. This included Duan Zixuan and Qiu Xingong. These days, they had been living and eating in the camp. Of course, if there was an important court meeting, they could still leave the camp to attend it. The day before yesterday, Li Zixuan had come to Chang'an to visit Duan Zixuan. Coincidentally, Duan Zixuan had just finished attending the morning court meeting. Otherwise, he could only come to the camp to look for Duan Zixuan. At this moment, Duan Zixuan was staring blankly at a map in the command tent. Qiu Xingong did not wait for the guard to come in and announce his arrival and strode in. Lawless. Simply lawless. "General Duan, go and see what Li Zixuan has done. If he continues messing around like this, the Black Armored Troops will be completely crippled." Qiu Xingong shouted at Duan Zixuan, who was sitting at the head of the table, in a flustered and exasperated manner. His loud shout immediately snapped Duan Zixuan out of his thought. He could not help but frown and ask, Xingong, what did Li Zixuan do to make you so angry? Qiu Xingong said angrily, This Qiu just heard that Li Zixuan summoned all the commanders of the 5 battalions to the side tent early this morning to discuss his new training manual. Zixuan, tell me, this kid has only been in the barracks for a day. What kind of training manual can he write? Isn't this nonsense? A new training manual? In contrast to Qiu Xingong's angry face, Duan Zixuan's eyes lit up when he heard that Li Zixuan had written a new training manual. He asked with interest, Xingong, tell me, what is the content of the training manual that Li Zixuan wrote? To be honest, Duan Zixuan was not angry at all. Instead, he was pleasantly surprised. That's right, pleasantly surprised. According to his original expectations, after Li Zixuan entered the black armored troops, it would take at least 3 to 5 days before he could come up with any useful suggestions. He never expected that Li Zixuan would write a training manual within a day of entering the camp. This was too fast. Cough cough. Of course, Duan Zixuan still had some doubts about the quality of the training manual. That kid's training manual is all nonsense. General Duan, listen to it first. The first rule states that the soldiers of each camp must start running 10 miles in their armor at 4 in the morning. Chapter 1752. Long-distance running with armor trains endurance, cavalry charging with hidden sharpness, and combat training for close combat. These are all good ideas. In the Black Armored Army's commander's tent, Duan Zixuan couldn't help but nod as he listened to Qiu Xingong describe the contents of Li Zixuan's new training manual. Seeing this, Qiu Xingong's face darkened. Duan Zixuan was obviously, brainlessly, siding with Li Zixuan. That's right. In Qiu Xingong's opinion, Li Zixuan's new training manual was ridiculous, yet Qiu Xingong was still nodding his head. What else could he be if he wasn't siding with Li Zixuan? However, he had misunderstood Qiu Xingong. Qiu Xingong didn't know that he was in the situation. The one who was looking at things objectively from the outside was Duan Zixuan, not him. In fact, even though Duan Zixuan admired Li Zixuan, it was only admiration. If he had to choose between the Black Armored Army and Li Zixuan, he would choose the Black Armored Army without hesitation. Therefore, when Duan Zixuan heard that Li Zixuan had come up with a new training manual, he was only pleasantly surprised for a moment. Following that, he became worried. He was worried that Li Zixuan's new training manual would have some illogical aspects that would cripple the black armored troops. Luckily, Duan Zixuan felt that most of the content in Li Zixuan's training manual was pretty good. However, when he saw Qiu Xingong's old face, which was as black as the bottom of a pot, he quickly coughed and said, "Cough, cough. But what are the push-ups and pull-ups in Army Commander Li's training manual?" Qiu Xingong could only swallow his anger. He replied in a low voice, "I don't know either. I think it's Li Zixuan's playful behavior. This guy really doesn't know what's good for him. It's fine if he's frivolous and unruly in the imperial court, but he's also fooling around in the military. General, if you don't stop him, the Black Armored Army will be completely destroyed." Long-distance running with armor trains endurance, cavalry charging with hidden sharpness, combat training for close combat. These are all good ideas. In the Black Armored Army's commander's tent, Duan Zixuan couldn't help but nod as he listened to Qiu Xingong describe the contents of Li Zixuan's new training manual. Seeing this, Qiu Xingong's face darkened. Duan Zixuan was obviously, brainlessly, siding with Li Zixuan. That's right, from Qiu Xingong's point of view, Li Zixuan's new training manual was so ridiculous, yet Qiu Xingong still nodded his head. If this wasn't brainless, standing on the side, then what was? However, he had misunderstood Qiu Xingong. Qiu Xingong himself didn't know that he was in the situation. The person who was looking at things objectively from the outside was Duan Zixuan, not him. In fact, even though Duan Zhixuan admired Li Zixuan, it was only admiration. If he had to choose between the Black Armored Army and Li Zixuan, Duan Zhixuan would choose the Black Armored Army without hesitation. Therefore, when Duan Zhixuan heard that Li Zixuan had come up with a new training manual, he was only pleasantly surprised for a moment. Following that, he became worried. He was worried that Li Zixuan's new training manual would have some illogical aspects that would cripple the black armored troops. Luckily, Duan Zhixuan felt that most of the content in Li Zixuan's training manual was pretty good. However, when he saw Qiu Xingong's face, which was as black as the bottom of a pot, he quickly coughed and said, "Cough, cough. But what are the push-ups and pull-ups in Army Li's training manual?" Qiu Xingong could only swallow his anger gloomily and replied with a muffled voice, "I have no idea about that either. I think Li Zixuan is just fooling around. This guy really doesn't know what's good for him. It's fine if he's frivolous and unruly in the imperial court, but he's also fooling around in the military. General, if you don't stop him, the Black Armored Army will be completely destroyed." Chapter 1753. Greetings, Grand General. Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao were led by Duan Zhixuan's personal guard to the Black Armored Army's drill ground. They cupped their fists and greeted Duan Zhixuan. The two of them were bowing so they couldn't see Duan Zhixuan's expression. However, they had a bad feeling about being called over at this time. "Humph. Sun Tao, Zhang Kongyan, you two are the captains of the Black Armored Army. Do you know what is the most important thing in the Black Armored Army?" Duan Zhixuan didn't ask them to stand up after they finished their greetings. Instead, he snorted coldly and asked. Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao's hearts skipped a beat. They knew that the situation was not good, but the two of them still braced themselves and replied, "Reporting to the Grand General, in the Black Armored Army, military orders are the most important. Military orders are like mountains." "Ha! Good. It's good that you two still remember." Duan Zhixuan sneered. "Then let me ask you two. Yesterday morning, when we were at the drill ground, didn't I say that Adjunct Li will be in charge of the Black Armored Army's daily training? Adjunct Li's orders are military orders and my orders. No one, no matter what position they hold, can disobey?" The two of them snapped out of their daze and roughly understood why Duan Zhixuan was angry. Zhang Kongyan hurriedly bowed and apologized. "Please calm down, Grand General. You did say that yesterday. Today, because our training philosophy is different from Adjunct Li's, we disobeyed him. Please forgive us, Grand General." "Different philosophy?" Duan Zhixuan's expression was frosty as he reprimanded them mercilessly. "In the Black Armored Army, military orders are like mountains and must be obeyed. I've already said that Adjunct Li's orders are military orders. How dare the two of you disobey a military order just because of a difference in philosophy? Even if Adjunct Li's new training regimen is full of loopholes, the two of you should follow it unconditionally and not rashly criticize it. You don't have the right to do so." Duan Zhixuan's words could be said to be stern. He didn't give any face to Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan because he wanted to help Li Zixuan establish his might. Li Zixuan had just arrived at the Black Armored Army. If he, as the commander-in-chief, did not support Li Zixuan would not be able to do anything. He wanted to use this opportunity to build up Li Zixuan's prestige. "Men, drag Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan away, and flog them 50 times as a warning to others." Duan Zhixuan waved his hand and shouted. Zhang Kongyan's face immediately turned pale, while Sun Tao's face flushed red. Although he could withstand 50 beatings, this would make him lose face in front of his subordinates. Old Sun still had some sense of shame. "General Duan, since this is their first offense, and they did it for the good of the soldiers under their command, please give them a lighter punishment." Since his own underling was beaten up, Qiu Xingong, as the big brother, naturally had to stand up and plead for leniency. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to continue being the big brother in the future. Lighter punishment? Duan Zhishuan glanced at Qiu Xingong and said, Xingong, you have been in the Black Armored Army for more than 10 years. You should know the consequences of disobeying a military order. I have already shown mercy by not chopping off their heads. Do you still want me to let bygones be bygones? That's impossible. Duan Zhishuan was determined to build up Li Zishuan's prestige today. He didn't even intend to give Qiu Xingong any face. Qiu Xingong's expression froze. Although he was furious, he knew that Duan Zhishuan was right. The Black Armored Army was the trump card of the Tang Empire's cavalry. Their military discipline had always been strict. Disobeying a military order here was punishable by death. What are you all waiting for? Drag the two of them away. Seeing that Qiu Xingong was speechless, Duan Zhishuan glared at the two bodyguards beside him and ordered sternly. Yes, sir. The two bodyguards responded and immediately rushed towards Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao. Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao didn't dare to resist. They could only let Duan Zhishuan's bodyguards drag them away. Seeing that the matter was settled, a voice suddenly came from outside the training ground. Wait! The two personal guards stopped in their tracks, and everyone looked towards the source of the sound. They saw a young general in silver armor walking towards them. As the visor on his helmet was lifted, everyone quickly recognized the person. Who else could it be but Li Zishuan? General, please wait. Can you allow me to say a few words? Li Zishuan was originally training with the soldiers of the Wu Battalion. The new training manual was proposed by him. He felt that he had to set an example and follow the soldiers to train according to the manual. This was because only by personally training could he make targeted improvements. Li Zishuan felt that as the person who made the training plan, he should be the one at the bottom and experience it personally. He shouldn't just be an armchair strategist from a high position. Although the soldiers of the Wu Battalion were all new to the Black Armored Army, they were all elites among the 12 guards of the capital. In terms of physical fitness, every one of them was still very outstanding. Therefore, even though the training of running 10 li with their armor on was a bit strenuous for them, most of them still managed to complete it within the time limit of half an hour. As for Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin, they were both martial arts experts in the Qi transformation realm. Although they hadn't received such high-intensity military training before, they still had a good foundation in martial arts. Moreover, the military training at the beginning of the academy last year had also improved their physical fitness by a lot. Therefore, Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin also completed the 10 miles in armor within half an hour. However, after the run, the two boys were as tired as dogs. They could only pant heavily and couldn't say a word. As a grandmaster, Li Zishuan naturally still had energy left after the run. After he told Sun Jiping not to let the soldiers sit on the ground to rest immediately, he left the main group and came to the drill ground. With his excellent hearing, he happened to hear the conversation between Duan Zhishuan and Qiu Xingong. At this moment, seeing Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan being dragged away by Duan Zhishuan's bodyguards, Li Zishuan pondered for a moment and walked over to stop them. Oh? What do you want to say, General Li? An inexplicable look flashed across Duan Zhishuan's eyes. Then, he looked at Li Zishuan with a serious expression and said. Li Zishuan looked at Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao, then saluted Duan Zhishuan and said, General, please allow me to report that Captain Sun and Captain Zhang can't be blamed for this matter. When I gathered all the generals to discuss the new drill this morning, I already said in advance that it was up to everyone whether they wanted to accept the new drill. Those who didn't want to accept it, it wouldn't be too late to accept it when the results of the new drill are seen. The generals of the Black Armored Army are all veterans who have experienced hundreds of battles. It is normal for everyone to have their own views on military affairs. Therefore, I think that it is normal for Captain Sun and Captain Zhang to disagree with my views on the new drill. I hope that the general can give them a way out and let them off. Plead for mercy? Li Zixuan actually came to plead for mercy for Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan? Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan, who were being detained, suddenly had a look of disbelief on their faces. Then, they were pleasantly surprised. On the other hand, Qiu Xingong's face was stunned at first, but then he realized something. He couldn't help but look at Li Zixuan with eyes full of resentment. Because Li Zixuan's move of requiting evil with good was checkmate. Chapter 1754. Since Adjunct Li personally pleaded for you, I will not pursue the crime of disobeying military orders this time. But the two of you must remember this lesson. If you do it again, I will settle all the old and new debts with you. On the black armor military drill ground, facing Li Zixuan, who suddenly appeared to plead for Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao, Duan Zixuan squinted his eyes and looked deeply at Li Zixuan. Then, his old face turned serious as he spoke sternly to Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao. Yes. Thank you, great general. Thank you, great general. Hearing this, Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao hurriedly walked over and bowed to Duan Zixuan as if they had been granted amnesty. Duan Zixuan waved his hand and said, If you want to thank someone, thank Adjunct Li. Alright, the two of you can go and lead the team for training. Yes, sir. Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao replied. Then, they clasped their fists to Li Zixuan to thank him for pleading for them just now. Then, they left. General Duan, I am going to the A Battalion to take a look at Adjunct Li's new training method. I will not accompany you. At this moment, Qiu Xingong clasped his fists to Duan Zixuan and said with a dark face. Previously, when he pleaded for Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao, Duan Zixuan did not give him any face at all. But when Li Zixuan came, he only said a few words and asked Duan Zixuan to let Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao go. Such obvious favoritism made Qiu Xingong very angry. Of course, what made him even more angry was that Li Zixuan had used Duan Zixuan's favoritism to sell Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao a favor. Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao were his loyal followers. Li Zixuan was trying to steal his men. Even if he didn't succeed in poaching this corner, he had still planted a seed of suspicion between Qiu Xingong, Zhang Kongyan, and Sun Tao. Just imagine, after this incident, would Sun Tao and Zhang Kongyan still stand firmly on Qiu Xingong's side in the future? Even if they did, Qiu Xingong would not dare to completely trust the two of them like before. This was because he could not guarantee that the two of them would not betray him. Therefore, Qiu Xingong felt as disgusted as if he had eaten **T. He couldn't stay here any longer. Duan Zixuan obviously knew that Qiu Xingong was unhappy in his heart right now, but it wasn't good for him to point it out to his face. He could only nod and say, All right, Xingong, you can go back to your work. Qiu Xingong cupped his fists and turned around to leave, not even sparing a glance at Li Zixuan. Li Zixuan didn't mind at all. After Qiu Xingong left, he cupped his fists towards Duan Zixuan and said, General Duan, if there's nothing else, this general will go and instruct the soldiers in their training. After all, the new drill has just been introduced today. Many soldiers, including the commanders of the various battalions, still don't know the specific movements. I can only rest assured if I watch from the side. Duan Zixuan nodded and said with a smile, Ho, good. This general still has some doubts about the contents of your drill. I'll go take a look with you. Even though Duan Zixuan was on Li Zixuan's side when it came to Zhang Kongyan and Sun Tao, Duan Zixuan still had his doubts about the new training manual. If he didn't clear up his doubts, he wouldn't be at ease to fully implement Li Zixuan's training manual in the Black Armored Army. Good. Grand General, please. Hearing this, Li Zixuan made a sound of agreement and made an inviting gesture. He had originally planned to wait a few days before letting Duan Jishuan see the results of the drill. But since Duan Jishuan wanted to see it now, he had no reason to refuse. It was a good opportunity for Duan Jishuan to give him some advice and prevent him from going astray. Old Master! Old Master! His Highness King of Shu is here. South of Chong and City, Lin family's front hall. Lin Wenyuan was having breakfast with his wife in the front hall. Suddenly, a servant rushed in and bowed to Lin Wenyuan. What? His Highness King of Shu? Why is His Highness King of Shu here? Lin Wenyuan was stunned. His right hand, which was holding chopsticks, couldn't help but tremble. Although he was doing well in the business world with the help of the Flame-Yellow Chamber of Commerce, Lin Wenyuan was still very respectful of the imperial power. He had never thought that he would have any interaction with the imperial family one day. Old Master, it's true. His Highness King of Shu is outside the courtyard. He said that he has something to discuss with you. The servant's face was still in shock. Obviously, Li Ku's arrival had a great impact on him. Old Master, His Highness King of Shu is now a student of Yanhuang College. My Hao is also going to Yanhuang College. In that case, they can be considered classmates. Do you think that His Highness King of Shu is here to look for Hao? Madame Lin said at this time. Lin Wenyuan frowned. After a while, he nodded and said, Madame Lin is right. Men, go to the backyard and wake up that unfilial son. Wake Hao up. Come to the front yard to meet the guest. It was early in the morning. It was time for breakfast, but Lin Hao was not at the table. As for where he went, was there a need to ask? He was probably still sleeping. A few days ago, the academy released the result. Lin Hao was unexpectedly admitted to Yanhuang College. In the days before school started, this guy had been completely indulging. Cough cough. His indulgence was not the same as the indulgence of other rich young masters. This guy took out all the novels he had accumulated in the past 6 months and read them every day and night. He went to bed very late every night, so he usually couldn't get up in the morning. Lin Wenyuan was too lazy to say anything about this. Yes, Old Master. A servant girl who was serving at the side hurriedly followed the order and left. At this time, Lin Wenyuan seemed to have thought of something. He instantly stood up and said angrily to the servant just now, Bastard, His Highness King of Shu came to visit. You didn't directly bring him in. How dare you stop him? Did you eat a bear's heart or a leopard's gall? Normally, people who came to the Lin mansion had to be notified, but Li Ku was different. He was a prince. Why would he need to be notified when he came to a small merchant's house? The servant hurriedly said, Old Master, I wouldn't dare. His Highness King of Shu insisted that he should be notified when he came to visit. That's why I came in to report. Lin Wenyuan breathed a sigh of relief. He nodded and said, Let's go. Come with me to welcome His Highness King of Shu. Out of politeness, Li Ku wanted to report first before coming in. However, Lin Wenyuan did not dare to put on airs. He was not qualified, so he had to go out to welcome him personally. Immediately, a large group of servants and servant girls in the front hall followed behind Lin Wenyuan and Madame Lin and walked quickly towards the gate. When they arrived at the gate, to Lin Wenyuan's surprise, there was no large group of palace guards outside the gate. There was only an elegant young man dressed in a scholarly robe. His clothes were not luxurious, but they could not hide the innate noble aura of the young man. Needless to say, that young man was Li Ku. It was hard to imagine that a prince would go out without a single guard. Lin Wenyuan hurriedly went up to him and bowed respectfully. Your Highness King of Shu has graced my humble abode with your presence. I hope your Highness will forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Chapter 1755. Haha. Boss Lin, you don't have to be so courteous. This prince is visiting incognito today. Why would you make such a big fuss? Outside the Lin mansion, Li Ku walked over with a smile and helped Lin Wenyuan up. He had woken up early in the morning and sent someone to Lantian County to ask for the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce President's seal from Han Yushi. After knowing that it was Li Zixuan's idea, Han Yushi did not suspect anything. She also knew that Li Ku was one of Li Zixuan's favorite students, so she gave the seal to the guard sent by Li Ku. After receiving the seal, Li Ku came to the Lin mansion alone. The reason why he came alone was because he did not want to make a big fuss. After all, Li Zixuan had told him last night that he could only plan this in secret and could not stand out in the open. As for the safety of leaving the Lin mansion alone, he was not worried. Firstly, this was Chang'an City, right under the nose of the emperor, so the security here was pretty good. Secondly, Li Ku was not some weak scholar. In terms of martial arts, he had been taught by famous masters since young. At such a young age, his martial arts were already quite good. Even if he met with danger, Li Ku was confident that he could escape. Oh, this old man understands. This old man understands. The news of Your Highness coming to the Lin mansion today will definitely not spread. Your Highness, please come in and talk. Hearing this, Lin Wenyuan, who had been in the business world for many years, immediately understood. He first promised Li Ku and then invited him in. Haha, Boss Lin, please. Li Ku laughed, thinking that this Lin Wenyuan was also a clever person. No wonder Li Zixuan was willing to let him work for the Chamber of Commerce. Under Lin Wenyuan's lead, the group came to the front hall. Lin Wenyuan ordered the servants to bring tea and then sent all the servants out. Haha, Boss Lin, you don't have to be so polite. This prince is visiting incognito today, why would you make such a big fuss? Outside the Lin mansion, Li Ku walked over with a smile and helped Lin Wenyuan up. He had woken up early in the morning and sent someone to Lantian County to ask Han Yushi for the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce's president's seal. Knowing that this was Li Zixuan's intention, Han Yushi did not suspect anything. She also knew that Li Ku was one of Li Zixuan's most valued students. Thus, she handed over the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce's president's seal to the guard sent by Li Ku. After receiving the president's seal, Li Ku came to the Lin mansion alone. The reason why he came alone was because he didn't want to make a big deal out of it. After all, Li Zixuan had told him last night that he was only allowed to plan this matter in secret. He absolutely couldn't stand on the surface. As for the safety of leaving the prince's mansion alone, he was not worried. Firstly, this was Chang'an City, right under the emperor's nose, so the security was pretty good. Secondly, Li Ku was no weak scholar. In terms of martial arts, he had been taught by famous masters since he was young. His martial arts skills were already quite good at such a young age. TT to the to TTT to, oh. This old man understands. This old man understands. Your Highness' visit to the Lin mansion today will not be spread. Your Highness, please come in. Lin Wenyuan, who had been in the business world for many years, immediately understood. He gave his word to Li Ku and then invited him in. Haha, Boss Lin, please. Li Ku laughed. This Lin Wenyuan was a clever person. No wonder Li Zixuan was willing to let him work for the Chamber of Commerce. Under Lin Wenyuan's lead, the group of people arrived at the front hall. Lin Wenyuan ordered the servants to bring tea and then sent all the servants out of the hall. Chapter 1756. In the front hall of the Lin clan, Li Ku recounted to Lin Wenyuan the contents of the telegram Li Zixuan had sent him last night. Of course, in the process, Li Ku also gave Lin Wenyuan a brief explanation of the current situation between the great Tang and the Turk. As soon as his voice fell, Lin Wenyuan pondered for a moment, then stood up and cupped his hands towards Li Ku, saying in a deep voice, I am indebted to Marquis and His Highness for thinking so highly of me. Although this Lin is a merchant, I also know that the rise and fall of the country is related to the happiness of my generation. Without this peace and prosperity, how can a merchant like this Lin do business in peace? I can only become a slave of a fallen country. This Lin has also heard about the imperial court's recruitment of elite soldiers the day before yesterday. After hearing your Highness's explanation today, this Lin feels that the current situation is not optimistic. Although we merchants do not receive a salary from the imperial court, the only reason we can do business in peace is because your Majesty has created peace and prosperity for the people of the realm. Now that the country is in danger, no matter what others do, as long as I can help the imperial court defeat the Turks, this Lin is willing to use up all my wealth. Marquis and your Highness have instructed me to raise military funds, so this Lin will definitely do my utmost to gather all the merchants I can to raise sufficient funds for the frontline soldiers. The merchants of this era, especially those who had experienced the 5 barbarian rebellions and the chaos of the Sui dynasty, understood just how difficult it was to obtain peace and prosperity. Without peace, let alone glory and wealth, it would be difficult to even keep one's name. Lin Wenyuan's words came from the bottom of his heart and could be said to be powerful and resonant. Li Ku couldn't help but be moved. He stood up and cupped his hands towards Lin Wenyuan. Then, he said with a sigh, "This humble prince is deeply moved by Lord Lin's righteousness. The Yamacho truly did not misjudge you." Lin Wenyuan shook his head. "Your Highness praises me too much. This old man is just a crude man. How could I bear the weight of your Highness's profound righteousness?" "Haha, Lord Lin is too modest." Li Ku smiled, then continued, "You're right. Then I will leave this matter to you. Later on, I will go to the Tang Daily's editorial department and ask Li Yu to publish a notice from the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce calling for merchants to raise funds for the military. Old Master Lin, you will use the name of the Yan Huang Chamber of Commerce to mobilize all the personnel and resources within and outside the Chamber of Commerce. 3 days later, we will hold a donation gathering in hopes that the Chamber of Commerce will be able to raise enough funds for the imperial court." "Yes, Your Highness." Lin Wenyuan cupped his hands and accepted the order. This was the first time the Lin family had accepted a mission from the imperial family. Lin Wenyuan immediately felt that he was shouldering an extremely glorious mission. If he succeeded, then the Lin family's status among the common people would rise, and he, Lin Wenyuan, would become the ancestor of the Lin family. No matter what, this matter had to be done beautifully, Lin Wenyuan said to himself in his heart. Li Ku brushed his sleeves and cupped his hands to bid farewell. "Yamacho's message has been delivered. I will leave the rest to Boss Lin. I still have to make a trip to the workshop, so I will take my leave now." Lin Wenyuan hurriedly said, "Farewell, Your Highness." Li Ku smiled and said, "No need to send me off. I came here quietly, so I will leave quietly. There is no need to make a fuss. Here, this is the Wang Residence's token. If you encounter any problems that you cannot solve during this period, you can use this token to find me at the Wang Residence." As he spoke, Li Ku took out a token and handed it to Lin Wenyuan. Li Zixuan had left this matter to him, and whether this matter could be done well depended on Lin Wenyuan's ability. Therefore, Li Ku was very willing to help Lin Wenyuan within the limits of his ability. Lin Wenyuan was flattered and hurriedly took it with both hands. He said in fear and trepidation, "Thank you, Your Highness." "No need." Li Ku waved his hand and turned to leave. He really came here quietly and left quietly. After leaving the Lin residence, Li Ku rode his horse towards the east gate of Chang'an City. After dealing with Lin Wenyuan, his next stop was to deal with the editorial department of Tang Daily. He could just send a guard to explain to Li Yu and let Li Yu handle the rest. After all, Li Yu was in charge of the editorial department of Tang Daily. However, this was something that Li Zixuan had asked him to do. He was worried that his subordinates would not be able to convey the message clearly. Moreover, Li Ku had his own thoughts on this matter. He felt that it would be better to communicate with Li Yu face to face. When he reached Yong Ning Lane, Li Ku suddenly heard the sound of horses galloping behind him. He could not help but rein in his horse and turn around. He saw a black mass of imperial soldiers heading towards his direction. The people in the lead were familiar faces: Dugu Xian, Dugu Feiying, and Li Tai. Li Ku could not help but be startled. From the looks of it, people who did not know the situation would think that Li Tai was going to lead troops to the front lines. However, he knew his own situation. With Li Tai's physical fitness, it was already good enough that he could barely ride a horse. How could he lead troops to the front lines? Li Ku let his horse stop at the side of the road. When the troops behind him caught up, he said, "Qin Ke, where are you going?" As Li Ku had been busy with the formation of the gold-robed guards, he had not entered the palace for a few days. Therefore, he did not know that Li Tai had entered the palace to bid farewell to Li Er yesterday. "Little Ku, why are you here?" Seeing Li Ku by the roadside, Li Tai was a little surprised and could not help but exclaim in surprise. Seeing that Li Tai did not answer his question, Li Ku had no choice but to reply, "The Yamacho asked me to go to the workshop to do something. I was just about to leave the city." "Qin Ke, where are you going with so many imperial soldiers?" Li Tai replied, "Hasn't the Yamacho always wanted to build a telegraph relay station in the north? Yesterday, everything needed for the telegraph relay station was prepared, so today I plan to bring the students and teachers of the Trump Card Project to the north to build the telegraph relay station. Now that the Tang Empire and the Turkic Khaganate are like fire and water, Father and Teacher Wenji are worried about our safety, so they have added so many guards. Hey little Ku, you go to the workshop. I'm going to the academy now. It's on the way, so let's go together." With that, the little fatty kicked the belly of the horse and waved his hand to signal for the team to continue moving. Li Ku hurriedly urged his horse to follow. He looked at Li Tai and said with some dissatisfaction, "Of course I know about the telegraph relay station, but I didn't expect Qin Ke to leave today. Why didn't you tell me about such an important matter in advance? If I had known, I would have gone with you to the north today." Even without Li Tai saying it, Li Ku knew that this trip to the north was very risky. If not for the fact that he had to take on several positions, he would definitely have gone with Li Tai. Hearing the concern in Li Ku's words, Li Tai's heart warmed. He smiled and said, "Hey, do you think I don't know that little Ku has a lot of things to do? Don't worry, with General Dugu and the others escorting us, there won't be any danger. Just wait for our good news in Chang'an." Chapter 1757. The two brothers chatted along the way and soon arrived at Yun Mountain. Li Ku had originally planned to go to the Datong Daily editorial office in the workshop, but now that he heard that Li Tai was going to lead the academy's research team north, how could he, as a brother, not send them off? As for finding Li Yu to discuss publishing a notice to raise military funds in Datong Daily, this matter was not urgent, because the Datong Daily that was sold in the market today had already been finalized yesterday. The notice to raise military funds would definitely not be published in time, so it could only be published in tomorrow's newspaper. "Mr. Konggui, Mr. Wenji, everyone is here. The Academy Auditorium." Li Gang, Yen Silu, and the other senior members of the Academy had specially prepared a farewell ceremony for Li Tai and the others when they went north to build a telegraph relay station. At this moment, Mo Huai counted the number of students in the auditorium and then cupped his hands to Li Gang, who was leaning on crutches. Although the old man was now healthy, he was old and his health was deteriorating day by day. If he walked normally without anyone to help him, he would have to rely on crutches. Good. Since the children are all here, Mr. Mo, as the leader of the physics department, you should say a few words to them. In the field of engineering, other than the mountain head, the one they respect the most is you. Li Gang's face revealed a trace of relief and worry. After a moment, he turned to Mo Huai and said. The latter half of his sentence was not wrong. In terms of engineering attainments, other than Li Zishuan, there were few people in Yanhuang College who could compete with Mo Huai. To be precise, it was Mo Huai and Mo Lingwei. Mr. Wenji, you flatter me. Mo Huai cupped his hands and said humbly. He then turned to look at the 32 students who were about to go north to build the telegraph relay station and said in a deep voice, Very good. Everyone is very punctual. Since everyone is here, I will say a few words first. Mo Huai paused for a moment. The students below the stage also quietened down and looked over. Mo Huai continued. You are all the most outstanding students of the academy, or perhaps you are teachers. This time, you will go up north to build the telegraph. Qin Ke will be the chief commander, and Mo Chue will be the deputy commander. Please remember that the northern border is different from the hinterland of Guangzhou, and it is also different from Yanhuang College. No one is allowed to act alone outside. This old man has already assigned all of your missions to Qin Quebec. When the time comes, everyone must listen to Qin Ke's instructions. This old man hopes that you can set up the telegraph relay stations in Bing Province and Yun Province in the shortest time possible and return safely. In addition, unless it's absolutely necessary, you're not allowed to mention your mission to anyone else. Do you understand? Understood. 32 Yanhuang College students straightened their backs and answered loudly. Yes. Mo Huai nodded, and then his gaze swept across every student and teacher in the hall before he said, That's right. In terms of engineering, all of you are the best among the teachers and students of Yanhuang College. Usually, all of your knowledge is obtained from the teaching materials compiled by the Yamacho, but that is all written knowledge. This old man once remembered that the Yamacho once said, What is learned on paper is ultimately shallow, and what is learned must be experienced. This trip up north is a good opportunity for all of you to display and verify what you have learned. I hope that all of you can cherish this opportunity. While serving the country, you can also open up a path for those who are lagging behind in engineering. Understood. Hearing this, the students cupped their hands in acknowledgement. Mo Huai then looked at Li Tai and said, Qin Ke, although we have deduced the construction of the telegraph relay station countless times before, we will definitely encounter all kinds of problems when it is actually built. When the time comes, just send a telegram to the academy or directly to the Yamacho. We will provide support from behind. Li Tai cupped his hands and said, Tai understands. Thank you, sir. Mo Huai nodded and looked at Mo Chue, the future tycoon of the Mo family. Ahem, the boundary between Mo school and engineering is becoming more and more blurred. In fact, Mo Huai did not know if there was a need to continue the Mo family's legacy, because Li Zishuan's engineering was more advanced and perfect than Mo school. He said, Mo Chue, you will lead the accompanying teachers from the academy this time. You must take good care of the children and ensure their safety. Mo Chue cupped his fists solemnly and said, Yes. Mo Chue understands. Mo Huai nodded in satisfaction and said, I've told you everything that needs to be told. Let Mr. Wenji have a few words with you. I don't know if you can make it in time for the new students of the academy this year. With that, he stepped aside and said to Li Gang, Mr. Wenji, please. Okay. Li Gang nodded and walked to the center of the stage with Wang Ji's help. He looked at the teachers and students of the academy below and said unhurriedly, Mr. Mo's instructions were very thorough, so I won't repeat them. What I want to say is, children, this trip to the north is not only an opportunity for you to practice the truth, but also an opportunity for you to use what you have learned to spread engineering and serve the country. The telegraph relay station is related to the outcome of the war between the Tang Empire and the Turk. It is your honor and the Academy's honor to be able to bear this heavy responsibility at such a young age. But there is one thing you must remember. You must return safely. You are the foundation of Yanhuang College. This old man, Li Gang, will wait for your safe return in Yunshan and the academy. With that, Li Gang cupped his hands solemnly at the teachers and students below the stage with a serious expression. In this special era and the current special situation, Li Tai and the others' trip to the north was given a special meaning. The atmosphere in the auditorium suddenly became more solemn. Affected by this atmosphere, the teachers and students were all moved and felt the great responsibility and mission on their shoulders. Their faith in this trip became even more firm. Sir, rest assured. We will definitely return safely. Under the leadership of Li Tai, the 32 elite members of the elite engineering team cupped their hands towards Li Gang and said solemnly. Li Gang nodded and waved his hand. Good. It's about time. Let's go. Yes. With Li Gang's words, the Academy's research team left the auditorium one after another. After a simple gathering outside, they boarded the carriages and set off for the mountain gate. As for the 1,000 Imperial Army guards that Li Tai had brought, they waited at the foot of the mountain. Qinke, take care. At the gate of the Academy, Li Ku shouted at the carriages. Little Ku, you take care too. Li Tai opened the curtains and waved at Li Ku, who was standing outside the car. Speaking of which, this was the first time the little fatty had left the capital since he was born. He hadn't thought much of it before, but at this moment of departure, Li Tai suddenly felt a strong reluctance to part with the academy, his fellow students, teachers, and his brother Li Ku. Generals, I'll leave the safety of the people from the academy to you. Li Gang personally followed the carriages to the foot of Cloud Mountain. As the group set off, Li Gang cupped his hands at Dugu Xian and Dugu Feiying. Behind Li Gang, Mo Huai, Yen Silu, and the others also cupped their hands at Dugu Xian and Dugu Feiying. Dugu Xian hurriedly cupped his hands. Teacher Wenji's words are too serious. This is what we should do. On this trip north, we brothers will use our lives to protect their safety. Teacher Wenji, please rest assured. Li Gang nodded and cupped his hands. Then this old man will thank you in advance. Teacher is too polite. It's getting late. The army should be setting off. Teacher, we'll meet again. Dugu Xian cupped his hands in return and ordered the army to set off. We'll meet again. Chapter 1758. The carriages moved and the horses neighed. 12 carriages carrying the teachers and students of the academy, as well as the necessary machinery and parts to build the relay station, headed northeast under the protection of more than 1,000 soldiers from the palace. Isn't that the Prince of Wei? Where are they going? Yunshan was located in the south of Lantian County. The group of people from the academy had to pass through Lantian County on their way north. When the group entered the city, they attracted the attention of many passers-by. When Li Tai opened the curtains and looked out, he was recognized by someone. It was Chen Shuozhen, who had gotten up early to buy the newspaper. With Li Tai's financial support, she and her sister, Chen Shuoyu, had already lived in the south of Lantian County. Of course, they rented a house. Chen Shuozhen was working as an apprentice in a medical hall in the city before school started. On one hand, she could learn some medical skills. After all, she was going to be admitted into the medical school of Yanhuang College. On the other hand, she could earn some money to support her family. Every day, she worked and rested. Her life was quite fulfilling. Early in the morning, Chen Shuozhen planned to buy the newspaper and go directly to the medical hall as usual. However, a group of carriages and many soldiers rushed into the city and headed north. A head popped out of the leading carriage. Coincidentally, it was someone she knew. Li Yu was puzzled. Of course, she knew Li Tai's identity. He was the Prince of Wei and also the most outstanding student in Yanhuang College. However, what were they doing? Were they going to fight a war? But why would it be Li Tai's turn to fight a war? She had never heard that the Prince of Wei knew martial arts. Coincidentally or not, Li Tai, who had stuck his head out of the carriage, also saw Chen Shuozhen in the crowd. It wasn't that Chen Shuozhen was a beauty that could captivate the birds and beasts, but there was a saying that when enemies meet, their eyes would turn red. Perhaps there was some kind of power that pushed the two of them to notice each other. "Stupid girl, it's you?" The carriages moved and the horses neighed. 12 carriages carrying the teachers and students of the academy, as well as the necessary machinery and parts to build the relay station, headed northeast under the protection of more than 1,000 soldiers from the palace. Isn't that the Prince of Wei? Where are they going? Yunshan was located in the southern part of Lantian County. The group from the academy had to pass through Lantian County on their way to the north. When the group reached the city, they attracted a lot of attention. When Li Tai opened the curtains and looked out, he was recognized by someone. It was Chen Shuozhen, who had gotten up early to buy newspapers. With Li Tai's financial support, she and her sister, Chen Shuoyu, had long since settled down in the south of Lantian County. Of course, they rented a house. Taking advantage of the fact that school hadn't started yet, Chen Shuozhen worked as an apprentice in a medical hall in the city. On the one hand, she could learn some medical skills. After all, she was taking the exam for the medical school of Yanhuang College. On the other hand, she could earn some money to support her family. Every day, she worked from dawn to dusk. Her life was quite fulfilling. Early in the morning, Chen Shuozhen planned to buy newspapers and go to the medical hall directly as usual. Unexpectedly, a group of carriages and many soldiers rushed into the city and headed to the north gate. A head popped out of the leading carriage. Coincidentally, it was someone she knew. Li Yu was immediately confused. Of course, she knew Li Tai's identity. The Prince of Wei was also the most outstanding student in Yanhuang College. But what was with such a big lineup? Were they going to war? But why would it be Li Tai's turn to go to war? She didn't hear that the Prince of Wei knew martial arts. Coincidentally or not, Li Tai, who had stuck his head out of the carriage, also saw Chen Shuozhen in the crowd. It wasn't that Chen Shuozhen was a beauty that could captivate the birds and beasts, but there was a saying that when enemies meet, their eyes would turn red. Perhaps there was some kind of power that pushed the two of them to notice each other. "Stupid girl, it's you?" Chapter 1759. Haha. Not only did Adjunct Li bring the unparalleled armor and the peerless godly weapon to the Black Armored Army, but he also brought all these training equipment. As the general of the Black Armored Army, I must thank Adjunct Li. In the Black Armored Army, on the second day of the new drill, many carriages loaded with goods arrived at the gate of the Black Armored Army early in the morning. Li Zixuan had sent a telegram to ask the workshop to customize the horizontal bars for the soldiers to do pull-up. There were 200 horizontal bars in total. Although they were far less than the 5,000 bars in the Black Armored Army, they were enough for the soldiers to take turns doing pull-up. Duan Zixuan couldn't help but smile at Li Zixuan beside him as he watched the carriages of military supplies being transported in. Humph. So what if he has some filthy money? He is just a son of a businessman after all. Qiu Xingong couldn't help but roll his eyes when he saw Duan Zixuan praising Li Zixuan like this, and he mocked in his heart. He did not have a good impression of Li Zixuan to begin with. On top of that, Li Zixuan had managed to turn the tables on him yesterday. He could not wait to find a chance to kick Li Zixuan out of the Black Armored troops. "General, you are too kind." Li Zixuan saluted Duan Zixuan and said, "I am now a member of the Black Armored Army. It is my responsibility to do something for the Black Armored Army." Duan Zixuan laughed and said, "Ha. You are too humble, Adjunct Li. Business is business, and personal wealth is personal wealth. Adjunct Li has spent so much money for the Black Armored Army that even I, as the general of the Black Armored Army, am ashamed. Let's not talk about the previous weapons and armor. I will report the training equipment to the Ministry of War and purchase it with military funds. I hope Adjunct Li will not refuse. The vanadium steel armor and the vanadium steel horse lance were specially made for the Black Armored Army by Chitsu Pavilion's new workshop. The cost was entirely borne by Li Zishuan. This was the promise that Li Zishuan had made to Li Er. Haha! Not only did Adjunct Li bring the unparalleled armor and the peerless godly weapon to the Black Armored Army, he even brought these training tools. As the general of the Black Armored Army, I really have to thank Adjunct Li. Inside the Black Armored Army, early in the morning, many carriages loaded with goods arrived at the gate of the Black Armored Army. These were the horizontal bars that Li Zishuan had sent a telegram to the workshop the day before. 2 sets of horizontal bars were specially made for the soldiers' training. Zishuan asked the workshop. There were 200 horizontal bars. There were 200 horizontal bars in the Black Armored Army. Although there were horizontal training, there were 200 bars. The Zishuan soldiers have the Zishuan training. He jumped godly man. Qiu Xingong rolled his eyes at Duan Zishuan's praise of Li Zishuan. He mocked Duan Zishuan in his heart. He did not have a good impression of Li Zishuan to begin with. On top of that, Li Zishuan had managed to turn the tables on him yesterday. He could not wait to find a chance to kick Li Zishuan out of the Black Armored troops. General, you are too kind. Li Zishuan saluted Duan Zishuan and said, I am now a member of the Black Armored Army. It is my responsibility to do something for the Black Armored Army. Duan Zishuan laughed and said, Haha! You are too humble, Adjunct Li. Business is business, and personal wealth is personal wealth. Adjunct Li has spent so much money for the Black Armored Army. Even as the general of the Black Armored Army, I am ashamed. Let's not talk about the previous weapons and armor. This time, I will report the training equipment to the Ministry of War. I hope Adjunct Li will not refuse. The vanadium steel armor and the vanadium steel horse lance were specially made for the Black Armored Army by the new workshop of Chitsu Pavilion. The cost was all borne by Li Zishuan himself. This was the promise that Li Zishuan made to Li Er. Chapter 1760. Chumo Baolin, we have been in the Black Armored Army for 2 days now. How do you feel? After setting the challenge with Qiu Xingong, Li Zishuan came to the training area of the Wu Battalion and asked Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin, who had just finished their 10-mile-long run. Now, other than the Wu Battalion, there were also the A Battalion and D Battalion. However, from a personal point of view, Li Zishuan was closer to the Wu Battalion. On one hand, the soldiers in the Wu Battalion were all new recruits, and he was also a new recruit. Naturally, the relationship between the 2 new recruits would be closer. Secondly, he knew a lot of people in the Wu Battalion. Sun Jiping aside, there was also Qing Chumo and Yuqi Baolin. This made Li Zishuan even more biased towards the Wu Battalion. How do you feel? Xiao Xian, I don't think I can stay in the Black Armored troops any longer. The first day was still okay, but yesterday I was so tired. I woke up early in the morning and had to do a 5-kilometer long run. After the run, I had to do combat training. If I wasn't careful, I would be beaten black and blue. That's not all. After that, I still have to do formation training, cavalry charging, mounted archery training, and after dinner, I still have to run 5 kilometers. No. I really can't stay in the Black Armored Army anymore. At this moment, Qing Chumo was lying on the grass with stars in his eyes. He had just finished the 10-mile run not long ago. When he heard Li Zishuan's question, he couldn't help but complain. It was just that the voice of this ridicule was so weak. Yesterday was the first day of the new training in the Wu Battalion. Almost everyone was tortured half to death. Among them, there were more than 10 people who failed the training and were punished by not having lunch. After experiencing the pain of not eating at noon, Ching Chumo and Yuchi Bao Lin put in extra effort, especially during the 10 li long-distance run. Their legs were almost broken from running, and only then did they barely make it through. Chumo Baolin, we have been in the Black Armored Army for 2 days now. How do you feel? After setting the challenge with Qiu Xingong, Li Zixuan came to the training area of the Wu Battalion and asked Ching Chumo and Yuchi Baolin, who had just finished the 10-mile-long run. Now, besides the Wu Battalion, there were also the A Battalion and D Battalion. However, Li Zixuan was closer to the Wu Battalion from a personal point of view. Firstly, the soldiers in the Wu Battalion were all new recruits, and he was also a new recruit. Therefore, the relationship between the two new recruits would naturally be closer. Secondly, there were many familiar faces in the Wu Battalion. Not to mention Sun Jiping, there were also Ching Chumo and Yuchi Baolin. Therefore, Li Zixuan couldn't help but be more biased towards the Wu Battalion. How do you feel? Xiao Xian, I don't think I can stay in the Black Armored Troops any longer. The first day was still okay, but yesterday I was so tired. I had to run 5 kilometers with my armor on. After the run, I have to do combat training. If I'm not careful, I'll be beaten black and blue. That's not all. After that, there's formation training, cavalry charging, mounted archery training, and after dinner, I still have to run 5 kilometers. I've never been so tired in my entire life. No. I really can't stay in the Black Armored Army any longer. Ching Chumo was lying on his back on the grass with stars in his eyes. He had just finished the 10-mile-long run. When he heard Li Zixuan's question, he couldn't help but complain. It was just that the voice of this ridicule was so weak. Yesterday was the first day of the new training in the Wu Battalion. Almost everyone was tortured half to death. Among them, there were more than 10 people who failed the training and were punished by not having lunch. After experiencing the pain of not eating lunch at noon, Ching Chumo and Yuchi Baolin put in extra effort, especially during the 10 li long-distance run. Their legs almost broke from running, and only then did they barely pass the hurdle. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.